Chapter 652. Although the scholar wasn't smart, he wasn't completely brainless. I want some time alone. This is a trap. What's wrong? The scholar gritted his teeth in pain. He felt nauseous, and sweat oozed out of his pores. His mind was muddled, like a messy ball of yarn that couldn't be cut. He couldn't find any clues. Faced with this situation, the scholar subconsciously wanted to ask Enchanting for advice. No. Enchanting. The scholar felt a flash of inspiration in his mind. His blocked and muddled mind suddenly became clear. He knew what was wrong. It was Enchanting. The scholar gripped the handrail tightly, barely supporting his body from falling. His eyes were fierce and full of murderous intent. He gritted his teeth and found someone to secretly contact Enchanting. If Enchanting hadn't offered several strategies, how could the situation be like this? This scoundrel seemed to be thinking for the Red Lotus group, but in reality, he had hidden evil intentions. He wanted to kill the entire group. This was probably the smartest moment of the scholar's life. Many seemingly inconspicuous details became abnormally clear. Enchanting had initially determined that Lu Shi and his group would attack Fenghu County first because the mountain road to Fenghu County was short, making it convenient for a sneak attack. And the result? The scholar believed Enchanting's inference and withdrew the garrison of Jinmen County. He guarded Fenghu County with fear and trepidation, but the result was that Jinmen County was lost that night. The 3,000 soldiers sent by the scholar to ambush failed and were seen through by Lu Shi. In the end, they suffered a double loss. Before Jinmen County fell, Enchanting went to Red Lotus County. Not long after, the second-in-command betrayed the leader and occupied Red Lotus County. After that, the scholar received a secret letter from Enchanting. The letter told him that the leader of the Red Lotus group had been captured by the second-in-command and taken to Chuyu County. The scholar had no choice but to split his troops into two. One would attack Jinmen County, and the other would rush to Chuyu County to save the leader. When the scholar led his troops and the second-in-command's rebel army in Chuyu County confronted each other and restrained each other, Red Lotus County fell and Fenghu County was taken. It seemed that not only had Enchanting played him, but the stupid second-in-command had also been played by Enchanting. Without Enchanting's secret help, how could Red Lotus County have fallen so quickly? Understanding this, the scholar felt a sweetness in his throat. The taste of iron rose from his throat, and he fainted from anger. Military counselor. Counselor. Military advisor. Advisor? Someone, call the doctor over. The scholar's face was pale, and his body was on the verge of collapse. It was a heart-wrenching sight. When he spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the ground, scaring the crowd even more. The scene was chaotic and out of control. As for the culprit behind all this? Seeing that the situation was not good, Enchanting had already used the cicada-shedding carapace to escape with his sworn brothers. The dark-faced man asked in a low, muffled voice, "Big brother, do you think that Lu Shi will keep his promise?" Enchanting was wearing a large winter cloak. He stood outside the cave and looked into the distance. His eyes seemed to pierce through the mountains and land on Chuyu County. Lu Shi will keep his promise. I don't think he would dare. Big brother has been so busy with Lu Shi's affairs these past few days that he's lost weight. The corners of Enchanting's lips curled up, and a sharpness appeared in his eyes. His previous dispiritedness had been swept away, and he vaguely carried a trace of high spirits that he hadn't seen in a long time. He knew very well how many troops the Red Lotus group had. There were at least 50,000 captives that Lu Shi had captured. According to the agreement of 10 men and horses, Enchanting could get 5,000 to 6,000 men and horses, as well as a generous sum of provisions and money. With these assets, Enchanting also had the capital to join the rescue of the emperor in Dongqing. If it was done properly, he might be able to borrow more troops and rope in more top talents. When that time came, he must kill his way back to his homeland and make the traitors of the 4 factions of Nanman pay with their blood. Thinking of this, countless scattered scenes flashed before his eyes. Each scene was filled with terrified screams, spreading blood, crying of despair, the wanton laughter of the enemy, the raised butcher's knife, rolling heads, broken limbs, and scattered internal organs. Since he was born, Enchanting had been the noble son of the En family. He was the favored son of God that everyone sought after. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? These were the sins of the 4 factions of Nanman. Naturally, they had to be paid with blood. As long as Enchanting was still alive, he would never let go of this hatred. With him, there would be no Nanman. Enchanting's sworn brothers looked at each other. They knew that their eldest brother was beginning to reminisce about the past again. They had just conquered the 3 districts of Red Lotus, Fenghu, and Jinmen, and their foundations were not yet stable. The Red Lotus group had been developing in Qingda County for many years and had many brainless believers. In order not to fail, Jiang Pengji ordered Qiguan Rang and the others to consolidate their foundations and integrate the troops. At the same time, they had a deeper understanding of the situation in the 3 districts. They had to understand the ins and outs of the situation so that they could prescribe the right medicine in the future. After all, brainless believers were in the minority. Most of the people still followed blindly. The former was incurable, but the latter could still be saved. For the common people, it didn't matter who the officials were. What mattered was whether the officials could bring them a good life, whether they could provide them with a place of protection in this chaotic world. As long as they understood the problems of the people in the 3 districts and prescribed the right medicine, they would know that following Jiang Pengji was far more promising than following the Red Lotus group. The people would naturally submit to her. Of course, the Red Lotus group's methods of brainwashing its believers inspired Jiang Pengji. The Red Lotus group could use deals and propaganda to discredit others and build momentum for the sacred group. Naturally, Jiang Pengji could do the same. This method could also be used in the military camp to teach loyalty to the soldiers. Hadn't the audience in the live stream recommended the position of political commissar to her? However, the position of political commissar required someone with a certain level of knowledge. What Jiang Pengji lacked the most at the moment was intermediate talents, so she could only put this plan aside. However, there was no need for such high-end talents to brainwash the people, and there was no need to wait for the implementation in the future. During the period of rest and reorganization, Jiang Pengji was not idle. Jingrong, come over and take a look. What do you think of this nursery rhyme? Jiang Pengji was dressed in brown linen clothes. Her long hair draped over her shoulders without a crown. She looked a little unrestrained and romantic. It was extremely rude and unrestrained to go out and meet guests without a crown. It was almost equivalent to sitting in front of others. However, looking at her long jet black hair that was still damp, it seemed that she had just taken a bath. Yang Si swallowed the words that he was about to blurt out and said, "The weather is cold now. How can my lord not take care of your body?" The colder the weather was, the more important it was to keep warm. Jiang Pengji grabbed her long wet hair and raised her eyelids carelessly. "My body is very good. I don't have any minor disasters or illnesses all year round. Moreover, there is a charcoal brazier in the house, so it's very warm." After she finished speaking, she handed the roll of bamboo slips in her hand to Yang Si. Yang Si took it and looked at it. "What is this?" "This is a nursery rhyme." The handwriting on the bamboo slips was vigorous and powerful. The words were written in bold and flamboyant calligraphy. One could not help but sigh with emotion. The words were like the person. Chapter 653. In Jiang Pengji's opinion, those stubborn believers were like ticking time bombs. They must not be allowed to live. However, what about those weak-willed fence-sitters? Could Jiang Pengji kill them all one by one? Obviously, this was impossible. Since they were fence-sitters, why not pull them over to her side? "I plan to let the child beggars in the 3 counties sing this nursery rhyme everywhere. I don't believe that the Red Lotus group can cause any trouble." In fact, this nursery rhyme was the result of a discussion between Jiang Pengji and the 150,000 idle spectators. It was simple, easy to understand, and catchy. With Jiang Pengji's manipulation behind the scenes, she was not afraid that it would not be sung well enough. Even if the illiterate old woman heard it, she could easily understand the meaning behind it. Yang Si thought about it carefully. It was indeed feasible. Most of the people were ignorant and did not have their own judgment. If the Lord killed all the stubborn believers of the Red Lotus group in a thunderous manner, it would inevitably provoke a crusade from the outside world. They would say that the Lord was cruel and heartless. In this way, the Red Lotus group would be whitewashed and become a white lotus that was bullied by evil forces. The real good people would be attacked by the common people. Instead of that, it was better to occupy the moral high ground. Jiang Pengji could not portray herself as a weak person, but she could portray herself as a savior of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Yang Si's eyes flickered slightly. He thought about it and borrowed a brush and ink to write another nursery rhyme on the bamboo slip. The nursery rhyme Jiang Pengji wrote was to expose the Red Lotus group, while the nursery rhyme Yang Si wrote was to eulogize Fengyi County. In Yang Si's opinion, it was not enough to attack and expose the evil deeds of the Red Lotus group in Qingda County and let the people see the true colors of the Red Lotus group. They had to add fuel to the fire. Would they follow the Red Lotus group and be exploited and bullied, or would they follow Lu Shi and live a good life? Obviously, one would know which to choose even if they thought with their toes. In just 2 or 3 days, the 2 nursery rhymes spread from Fenghu County to Honglian County and Jinmen County. They could be heard in the streets and alleys. At first, it was just child beggars and naughty children who liked to join in on the fun. Later, there were some people who had been exploited by the Red Lotus group and had a hard time surviving. Although it had not been long since they were sung, the situation in the city had obviously improved a lot. The most obvious point was that there were fewer brainless believers who tormented them. Qiguan Rang often breathed a sigh of relief. Without the foolish people who were tormenting him, he could also put his extra effort elsewhere. Now, the main force of the Red Lotus group was gathered in Chuyu County. This was a tough nut to crack. It would not be as easy to take down as the previous 3 counties. If they wanted to take down Chuyu County, they had to concentrate their forces. Otherwise, it would be too difficult. Qiguan Rang, Wei Ci, and Yang Si tacitly chose the captives they could use and sent them back to Fengyi County in batches. Most of the people were sent to mine, open up wastelands, build roads, or build houses. It would be a waste not to use free human resources. According to Jiang Pengji's previous plan, these captives would have a 6-month probation period. If they performed well, they might even be able to enter the Minton district under Wei Ci's jurisdiction. They would be allocated farmland and become a Minton soldier. They would be able to get 60% or 70% of the crops they grew. Of course, during the half-year probation period, Jiang Pengji also took care of their food and lodging, but she only cared about their food and did not care about their well-being. She did not pay them any salary. In order to appease the captives and prevent them from causing trouble on the way, these welfare conditions had been agreed upon in advance. However, the captives were still trembling with fear. They felt that Jiang Pengji's words were meant to deceive them. As the victor, it was fine that she did not kill the captives to reduce their rations. Would she be so kind as to take care of their food and lodging? With trepidation and fear for the outside world, these captives were sent to Fengyi County in batches. Su Ku and the others worked day and night, but before they could finish what they were doing, a large pile of official duties fell from the sky with the arrival of the captives. They had no choice but to grab able-bodied men everywhere to share the official duties. Otherwise, when Jiang Pengji returned from the battle, they would probably only see the lush weeds on their graves. The women's department in the government office had the most profound experience. Among them, there was a girl with a plump figure. She had lost a lot of weight in the past few days. She had gone from cute baby fat to a bony beauty. Not only that, but the supervisor of the women's department in the government office, Shangguan Wan, also grabbed Feng Jin's wife, Wei Jingxian, to be an able-bodied man. Wan Er's good sister, anyway, Master Feng has allowed you to go out and broaden your horizons. This day will come sooner or later. Let's not be reserved. Wei Jingxian could not let go of the lively and active Changsheng, but she could not stand Sheng Wanwan's constant pestering. Fortunately, Changsheng was obedient. She sat beside her seriously during the day and did not cry or make a fuss. When she was hungry, she asked for food from the maids. When she was bored, she hugged her and nibbled on her feet or chubby little hands. She entertained herself and had fun. Even Wei Jingxian was grabbed for able-bodied men. What excuse did the others have for not working hard? Feng Zhen, who had always loved to have fun, was now so tired that even his occasional addiction had disappeared, not to mention drinking and finding beauties. Sure enough, he was busy for a while, then busy for a year. What 7 days off, eating, drinking, and having fun were all lies. Even on the night of the New Year, he hugged a stack of official documents to sleep. He was not a warm and fragrant lady. To prevent the captives from causing trouble, they were not gathered in one place. Instead, they were scattered and sent to different places. There were more than 30,000 captives. It sounded like a lot, but the number of people sent to different places was not that many. There was no need to worry about them causing trouble. When the gentry in Shenyang County heard the news, they all kept quiet out of fear. A strong sense of crisis spread in their hearts. If they caused less trouble, Feng Jin and Feng Zhen would naturally be much more relaxed. On the other side of the story, while Jiang Pengji was secretly promoting nursery rhymes, she was gathering her troops. She was valiantly and energetically marching towards Chuyu County. Excluding the troops stationed in the 3 counties, Jiang Pengji had only 8,000 elite troops at her disposal. With 8,000 troops, the Red Lotus Group in Chuyu County had 40,000 to 50,000 troops. It would be fine if the Red Lotus Group continued with their internal strife, but if they worked together to resist the foreign enemy, Jiang Pengji would have a hard time. The Red Lotus Group's troops were 5 to 6 times hers, and they had the advantage of defending the city. As the attacking party, she was at a great disadvantage. If the Red Lotus Group defended the city and did not come out, she could only retreat in defeat in the end. It was not that she had too few troops to defeat them, but that she had too little time. There was a deadline for rescuing the emperor, and she could not afford to delay it. However, if the Red Lotus Group continued with their internal strife, Jiang Pengji could take advantage of the situation. The military advisor of the Red Lotus Group had been fooled by Shui. He had finally sobered up from his rage. He immediately sent out an envoy to try to negotiate peace with the second-in-command. The most important thing now was to unite the forces of the Red Lotus Group and fight against the traitor Lu together. They should not allow the outsiders to take advantage of the internal strife. The second-in-command hesitated and did not agree immediately. Jiang Pengji was frowning in the tent. If the Red Lotus Group really unified and they were determined to defend the city and not leave, it would indeed be difficult. At that moment, the guards sent a message. Wei Ci was outside, requesting an audience. Jiang Pengji said calmly, "Invite him in." Wei Ci had come with a solution for Jiang Pengji. "I hope that my lord will allow me to persuade the rebels of the Red Lotus Group to surrender." Jiang Pengji's eyebrows twitched fiercely. Was he tired of living to persuade them at a time like this? She did not object immediately, but her expression showed that she did not agree. Wei Ci pursed his lips and did not speak. He looked straight into her eyes. Chapter 654. Jiang Pengji had thought that Wei Ci would back down, but she seemed to have underestimated this guy. He could be so stubborn. You should know very well what kind of people the Red Lotus Group is. You're going to lobby them at this time. Wei Zixiao, do you think your life is too long? The Red Lotus Group doesn't care about no killing of envoys when 2 armies clash. If I were in their shoes, I would be the first to kill whoever dares to send someone to lobby me at this juncture. Jiang Pengji's voice fluctuated a little. She asked, "Are you really not afraid of death?" Wei Ci smiled instead of getting angry. His expression softened a lot, as if he had a soft light filter. He said, "Of course I'm afraid." It was human nature to be afraid of death. Even though Wei Ci had been reborn, every time he thought of the scene of him drawing his sword to commit suicide, he still felt a trembling fear. However, if he could turn back time once, he would still choose to do so. Life was indeed precious, but to Wei Ci, some things were more important than it. It's good that you're afraid. Take good care of your life. Jiang Pengji didn't even look up. She gestured for Wei Ci to leave. Wei Ci said, "It's precisely because I'm afraid that my life and the lives of the people are worthy of respect. I am confident that I can convince the enemy leader. If I succeed, the casualties of our soldiers will be greatly reduced. It's true that my lord is brave and good at fighting. There are few opponents in the world, but the enemy has a large number of troops and the city walls as a barrier. They can advance to attack and retreat to defend. If they defend the city and deliberately delay time, even my lord will have a big headache. While the enemy is still divided, I think that sowing discord and instigating defection is the best way." At present, the Red Lotus group was still divided and hostile. They still had a chance. If the Red Lotus group put aside their former enmity and joined forces to fight against the enemy, Jiang Pengji's side couldn't afford to delay at all. They needed to seize the opportunity to fight a war, and the same was true of strategy. If they delayed for a while and the Red Lotus group became harmonious, it would be too late. Jiang Pengji was a little annoyed. She pondered for a while and finally made a decision. "If you can guarantee that you'll come back alive, I'll allow you to try." Wei Ci's face was filled with joy. Even his eyes were a little brighter. However, the audience in the streaming room was going crazy. Beauty Ci is out of her mind and wants to court death. Host, how can you not stop her? AID not enough, the Red Lotus group is a group of bandits. They don't have the habit of not killing envoys when two armies cross swords. If they see that Samiran is good-looking but not strong in martial arts, what if they develop crooked thoughts? Host, why didn't you stop him to the end? Who wants to add drama? The streamer has taken over 3 territories of the Red Lotus group. They hate the streamer to the core now. If Beauty Ci goes over, won't he be a ready-made punching bag? If it were any other force, I wouldn't be very worried. However, if it were the Red Lotus group, would be very nervous. This chapter's message, the key is that Wei Ci wants to go. The host tried to stop him, but he was determined. What do you expect the host to do? The viewers in the streaming room were worried about Jiang Pengji. But she would not make decisions for him just because she was worried. Perhaps her worry seemed to Wei Ci that she didn't trust his abilities, so when Wei Ci insisted, she chose to respect him. After obtaining permission, Wei Ci changed into a simple and plain Confucian robe and left the military camp with only a few guards. That night, the second-in-command got up from his concubine in irritation. He was about to call for hot water to take a bath when the footsteps of a messenger came from outside. Second-in-command, there is a group of people outside who claim to be messengers sent by Lu Shi. They want to discuss important matters with you. The second-in-command was halfway through putting on his clothes when he froze on the spot. After a while, he reacted and revealed a malicious smile. Lu Shi actually sent people over. Interesting, interesting. I want to see who is so unafraid of death. Let them in. I'll go over right away. The second-in-command took a battle bath and changed into a new set of clothes. He tidied himself up and went to meet the messengers sent by Lu Shi. When he entered the main hall, he saw a young man in a dark green Confucian robe sitting on the table. His sitting posture was standard and his back was straight. The hall was brightly lit. The candlelight swayed and the light flickered. The young man's long, dark hair was tied into a jade crown. He was meticulous, and the color of his hair made his already delicate skin look even fairer. His eyebrows were straight, his eyes were like dots of paint, and the bridge of his nose was high. No matter who saw him, they would praise him. What a handsome gentleman with red lips and white teeth. The young man seemed to have sensed movement outside the hall. He looked in the direction of the sound. Seeing the fierce-looking second-in-command, he looked calm. It was as if he was not in the enemy's camp, but in his own courtyard. He was drinking alone at a table. The second-in-command gathered his thoughts and strode to the seat of honor. He sat down in a dignified manner and said in a thunderous voice, "You were sent by Lu Shi to persuade me?" He wanted to call Jiang Pengji Lu Shi, but the second-in-command did not know the young man's specific purpose, so he showed mercy. Wei Ci bowed and said calmly, "No, my lord sent me here to point out a way for you to survive." As soon as he opened his mouth, the second-in-command's murderous intent gradually surged. He sneered, "Point out a way for me to survive?" Exactly. Wei Ci was not afraid at all. He said, "You are entrenched in Chuyu district and have 30,000 strong troops. You seem to be at the peak of your power, but don't forget that there are two strong enemies outside the city. Once the two besiege the city, how long do you think you can resist according to the reserves in the city?" If Wei Ci tried to persuade him and put himself in a lower position, the second-in-command would only be more arrogant and think more highly of himself. He was here to instigate the second-in-command. The two of them should be on equal footing. Therefore, even though he was in the enemy's camp, Wei Ci did not lower his aura at all. The second-in-command snorted. His eyes were as fierce as a wolf's. He stared at Wei Ci's neck, as if thinking of how to break it. The second-in-command was disdainful and said in a rough voice, "Although I have conflicts with the sacred sect, behind closed doors, we are all family. No matter what, Lu Shi is still an outsider. In this world, who would help an outsider instead of helping their own family?" Wei Ci said coldly, "Family? Are you referring to your own family who will be killed when the time comes?" The second-in-command's face turned green. Wei Ci continued, "You should thank my lord. If not for my lord, based on your rebellious behavior, how could the Red Lotus Group allow you to survive? What you said just now is right. Broken bones are still connected. How can a family have overnight hatred?" When it came to distorting the truth, the counselors under Jiang Pengji were all outstanding. Their ability to secretly change the concept was superb. It was clearly Jiang Pengji who had forced the Red Lotus Group to fall apart. In Wei Ci's words, Jiang Pengji had become a benefactor. Chapter 655. The second-in-command's face was livid. That feeling was as if the hidden thoughts in one's heart had been exposed and laid out under the sun, inexplicably shameful. Hee, so what? I can also wait for Lu Shi and the Red Lotus Group to suffer heavy losses, Wei Ci sneered. My lord controls most of Fengyi County, Shanyang County, and Qingde County. In the vast Wanzhou, there is only Chuyu County left. With such strength, how could both sides suffer? To put it bluntly, does the general think that he can run amok and ignore the heroes of the world just by relying on a mere 100,000 followers of the Red Lotus Parish? Don't you know? Previously, the Red Lotus Group had split its army of 36,000 to attack Jinmen County. There were less than 8,000 guards in Jinmen County. What was the result? They were routed like a mountain and captured more than 30,000 people. In that case, does the general still think that the Red Lotus Group can compete with my master? The second-in-command's eyes flickered with hesitation and struggle, as well as lingering fear. Just as Wei Ci had mocked him, he was like a frog in a well, looking at the sky. He thought that the Red Lotus Group had defeated the Tsing-Yi army and made them flee like rats, so they were already the overlord of the north. However, Wei Ci told him that the Red Lotus Group was actually very weak. They had 36,000 troops, but they were still defeated by 7,000 troops. This example was true, and he could not refute it. 36,000 soldiers were no match for 7,000. The 30,000 soldiers in the city did not give him any sense of security. Whether he chose to rely on the Red Lotus Group or sit back and watch the fierce battle between the Red Lotus Group and Jiang Pengji, he would not have a good ending. Wei Ci softened his voice to avoid pressuring her too much. My lord sent me here to sincerely guide the way for the general. The second-in-command did not make a sound this time. He stared at Wei Ci with his big, round eyes. Speak. I want to hear what you have to say. He snorted coldly, gritted his teeth in humiliation, and said fiercely, I'll die if I surrender to the Red Lotus Church. Do you think I won't die if I surrender to Lu Shi? It sounds nice, but in reality, it's just like that. Wei Ci smiled and said, General, if you pledge your allegiance to my lord and assist him in destroying the Red Lotus Group, you will be a meritorious minister in destroying the Red Lotus Group. Why poison a meritorious official? If I really did that, from now on, who would be willing to abandon the dark for the light and seek refuge with my master? General, why don't you think about it carefully? Have you ever had any conflict with my master? Was there any old scores? Since there isn't, why are you still worried? That's right, there's no enmity between him and Lu Shi. If he had taken the initiative to pledge allegiance, why would Lu Shi want to harm him? Even if they did not use him, Lu Shi would not harm him. On the contrary, he would treat him kindly. Otherwise, once word of this got out, Lu Shi's enemies would only stubbornly resist. Surrendering meant death, not surrendering meant death. So, it was better to fight to the end and not surrender. The balance in his heart slowly tilted towards Jiang Pengji. Wei Ci knew that the time was ripe, so he did not rush him. Instead, he looked relaxed and indifferent, calm and elegant. Can you guarantee that Lu Shi won't turn his back on us? My lord has set her sights on the world. A mere Qiuyu county is not worth her breaking her promise. The second-in-command's face turned green and black. He understood that he was being looked down upon, but what made him feel helpless was that others had the right to look down on him. Thus, he struggled even more intensely in his heart. At this moment, Wei Ci got up from his seat and flicked his sleeves. His voice was as clear as a clear spring in the mountains, as if one's whole body was immersed in an icy spring on a hot summer day. It made one shiver uncontrollably. General, time is running out, he said with a smile. My lord has been ordered to rescue the king. If the attack fails for a long time, he will definitely withdraw his troops to defend the 3 counties. Without the pressure from my lord, do you think the Red Lotus Group will let this go and not pursue your crimes of kidnapping the leader and defying the judgment of the sect? Even without Wei Ci's reminder, the second-in-command knew what would happen to him just by thinking about that scenario. Wei Ci added fuel to the fire. General, you have a strong military force, but most of them are followers of the Red Lotus Group. According to my speculation, except for a few trusted subordinates, no one else should know that you harmed the leader, right? If my lord withdraws his troops, the Red Lotus Group will find a way to prove your crimes. General, do you think that those followers who worship the leader won't turn against you? Not only would they turn against him, but they might even have their heads chopped off if they slacked off for a nap. The second-in-command knew that his position was unstable, but after listening to Wei Ci's words, he realized that the situation was far more serious than he had imagined. Now he was afraid, and he restrained his arrogance. Once he understood, he was more adaptable than anyone else. He bowed in a nondescript manner and asked for guidance. Please guide me, sir. Wei Ci sat back in his seat, a faint smile on his lips. I dare not say that I can guide you, but I do have a few good words to tell you, General. Wei Ci had arrived at the right time. The envoy sent by the Red Lotus Group for peace talks had arrived during the day. He tried every possible way to persuade the second-in-command, and he made a bunch of promises. The second-in-command was uneasy and did not immediately agree. He only said that he needed to think about it. Not long after nightfall, Wei Ci arrived. His sincere talk was far more reassuring to the second-in-command than a bunch of promises. In the face of a desperate situation, he would naturally choose the most beneficial path for himself. Relying on Lu Shi might not be a bad idea. Wei Ci's words gave the second-in-command a glimmer of hope. He secretly gritted his teeth and said to Wei Ci, during the day, the Red Lotus Group sent an envoy to persuade me to join forces with them. In order to show my sincerity, I'll get someone to kill those bastards. I only hope that you can put in a few good words for me, Wei Ci stopped the second-in-command and said, "You must not." The second-in-command was surprised. "Why not?" "We'll alert the enemy." Wei Ci did not even bat an eyelid as he continued, "If the envoy they sent is killed by you, they will surely know that you have defected to my master. When that time comes, they will be on guard, and you will be in danger. It's better to hold back for now, pretend to agree to cooperate, lure their elites into the city, and then lay an ambush, catching them like a turtle in a jar. At that time, they will be leaderless, and the Red Lotus group outside the city will have no one to command them. My master will then send troops to capture them. In this way, we can definitely eliminate this hidden danger easily." Wei Ci said it casually, as if it was a very common idea. But when the second-in-command heard it, he faintly felt the urge to sweat. In his opinion, the scholar in front of him was extremely handsome and did not pose a threat at all. If not for this, he would not have had the courage to stay in the same room with someone for so long, because he felt that Wei Ci was very weak. Now that he saw it, he felt that scholars were really scary. Their words were like swords, and their brushes were like knives. They were casual and could kill people without leaving a trace. Wei Ci asked him, "What does the general think?" The second-in-command stuttered slightly and said, "Very, very good." Wei Ci continued, "In order to win people's trust, I hope that the general can do one more thing." The second-in-command asked him, "What is it?" "Kill me." The second-in-command was stunned. He felt that there was something wrong with his ears. Otherwise, how could he have heard such a strange request? Kill you? Chapter 656. Strategists were heartless. Not only were they ruthless to their enemies, but they were even more ruthless to their own people and themselves. The second-in-command could not describe that feeling, but after listening to Wei Ci's explanation, there was only one thought in his mind: to tremble. In order to harm the enemy, he was willing to seek death. How ruthless was this? Wei Ci explained his plan in detail, and after a while, he asked for the second-in-command's opinion. "What does the general think of this plan?" The second-in-command came back to his senses and stammered, "Very, very good, whatever you say, sir." "In that case, let's have a pleasant cooperation." Wei Ci's smile was so beautiful that people could not help but sigh. This man was deep and tall, and could be called an elegant gentleman. Only the second-in-command, who was being stared at by him, could not feel happy. Instead, he had the urge to shiver, and his hair stood on end. Scholars were all scary. First, Enchanting, who played everyone in circles. Then, there was Wei Ci, who could turn the tables in the enemy's camp. If he could, the second-in-command would never want to provoke such a black-hearted scholar in his life. Not long after the second-in-command entered the main hall, there was a clattering sound, followed by the sound of swords being unsheathed, and a short and abrupt scream. The guards outside thought that someone had attacked the second-in-command and hurried in. They were all shocked by the scene in front of them. They saw a young man in a dark green Confucian robe lying on the ground, hugging his stomach and curling up. His face could not be seen, and a pool of thick black blood spread from his body. The guards immediately understood who was killed, and their faces turned pale with fright. Envoys should not be killed in a battle between two armies. Now that Lu Shi's envoy had been killed in a rage by the second-in-command, the two sides would not rest until one side was dead. If they were defeated on the battlefield, perhaps Lu Shi would cruelly massacre the city and kill all the captives to vent his anger. "Bastard Lu, do you think I'm afraid of him?" The second-in-command snorted and said in a rough voice, "Even if he came in person, I would kill him with one blow, not to mention the envoy sent by Lu Shi. Drag this man away, chop him up, and feed him to the dogs. Remember to clean up the bones and send them to Lu Shi." Peace talks? Damn it. If one comes, we'll kill one. If two come, we'll kill both. Do you think the Red Lotus group has no one? The deputy chief was so angry that no one dared to stop him. They could only obey the order and drag the corpse of the green-robed young man away. The strong smell of blood permeated the room, and the lights flickered, giving rise to a sense of fear. The second-in-command paced back and forth anxiously. His expression was gloomy. It was obvious that he was not as tough and imposing as he appeared to be after killing Wei Ci. Second leader. Since we've killed the envoy of that Lu thief, I'm afraid that Lu thief will receive the news that very night. If he challenges us tomorrow, let's fight then. Do you think I'm afraid of a brat who hasn't even grown hair yet? The second-in-command's temper exploded. After a while, he paced back and forth with a dispirited expression, as if he was going to break through the solid wood floor. After a while, the second-in-command took a deep breath and ordered his subordinates to invite the emissary sent by the Red Lotus group. After everyone retreated, the second-in-command hurriedly walked to the back hall. Wei Ci's clothes had already been changed. His linen clothes were brown, and the jade crown on his head had been replaced with a cloth scarf. Other than his outstanding looks and temperament, he seemed to be no different from an ordinary scholar. Sir. Sir. I've already done as you instructed. Will they take the bait? Wei Ci held a teacup and sipped at it. The taste of the tea was not very good, but he was not a picky person. Make it quick, Wei Ci said. It's best to lure their elites into the city tomorrow. If time passes, they will become suspicious. The second-in-command nodded obediently and said, Shall I send someone to escort you out of the city? Wei Ci waved his hand and refused. I'm a dead man and should not be exposed in front of others. Even the general's confidence may not be completely trusted. The best way to keep a secret is to have as few people who know about it as possible. I will temporarily disturb the general for a day or two. The second-in-command did not refuse. He was happy that Wei Ci was in his hands. At least he had a guarantee. If Lu Shi went back on his word, he would have nothing to fear with Wei Ci in his hands. However, the second-in-command thought about it and thought of another more dangerous problem. Sir, I followed your instructions and returned your human bones to District Magistrate Lu. Will you really not bear a grudge against me? It would be fine if he passed the message, but if he did not, Lu Shi would chop him up without a second thought. Then he would die an unjust death. Wei Ci smiled and said, Of course not. General, you should rest assured. In fact, Wei Ci's plan was an impromptu one. Before meeting the second-in-command, he had thought of many plans, but after seeing him in person, he overturned the previous plan and came up with a new one that was beneficial and harmless. Of course, this was also the most ruthless one. The second-in-command left confidently. Wei Ci slowly lowered his eyes. He put down the teacup in his hand, his eyes cold and fierce. Wei Ci already had the idea of uprooting the Red Lotus group. Why would he recruit people from the Red Lotus group into his own forces? He did not inform Jiang Pengji of this impromptu plan. In other words, the Lord was unaware of Wei Ci's death. Under such circumstances, if the second-in-command died, no one could say anything bad about her. At most, they could say that Wei Ci was black-hearted, ruthless, sinister, and treacherous. However, he did not care about his reputation for a long time, or rather, he had trained to be thick-skinned. Others could comment however they wanted, as long as they did not implicate the Lord. Yes, Wei Ci had no intention of letting the second-in-command of the Red Lotus group live. Not long after the second-in-command killed Wei Ci in anger, the messenger of the Red Lotus group received the news. After learning that Wei Ci had been killed, chopped into pieces of meat and fed to dogs, and that his incomplete human bones had been sent to Lu Shi overnight, the messenger was so happy that his teeth could not be seen. The second-in-command took the opportunity to express his worries. He had killed Lu Shi's trusted advisor. Wouldn't Lu Shi explode on the spot? The messenger of the Red Lotus group also took advantage of the situation, hoping that the two sides could shake hands and make peace, and use the danger of the city walls to resist Lu Shi. When the second-in-command heard this, he agreed readily. To be honest, in terms of acting, the second-in-command was quite clumsy. However, He had a full beard, and his expression was not easy to observe. In addition, the news that the Red Lotus group had received was too clear. Wei Ci had indeed been stabbed to death by the second-in-command. His face and body were badly mutilated, so they naturally did not suspect anything. The second-in-command had killed Wei Ci, which meant that he could no longer be recruited by Lu Shi. In the second half of the night, Jiang Pengji's tent was brightly lit. She frowned slightly, as if she had an ominous premonition. After waiting for a long time, she was about to rest for a while with her hand on her cheek when the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the tent. "What's going on outside?" Yang Si lifted the curtain and walked in. His waist was wrapped in white linen, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was followed by 2 attendants. Jiang Pengji keenly smelled the scent of blood. Her heart skipped a beat, and she asked, "What's wrong?" Zixiao, he was killed. Chapter 657. Because she couldn't sleep all night, Jiang Pengji kept the live stream on. She watched a group of night owls and idle people send bullet screens to kill time. When Yang Si said that, the night owls who were still dozing off in front of the screen instantly woke up. Fat Cat Chili, wait, what the F***ck, am I hearing things? What happened to Beauty Ci? Yi Wu Yenling, oh my god, don't scare me. How could something happen to Beauty Ci? How could it be? Today is not April Fool's Day. Nua Xiang, although I always feel that Beauty Ci is delicate and weak, he doesn't have the appearance of a short life. How could something happen to him? Cat Demon June, today is April Fool's Day. I'm not listening. This is definitely a joke designed by the streamer. Yun Ruochen, Wei Ci is dead? As his veteran fan, I absolutely can't accept this result. The live stream room was in an uproar. Although the live stream room only had an upper limit of 150,000 viewers, after several years, the number of live stream fans accumulated was more than 10 million. Wei Ci's Tiaba alone had more than 30 million followers. These 30 million fans were live fans, not zombie fans. The Tiaba was abnormally active. Although these auntie groups were all here for their looks, the world was a place where looks mattered the most. Now that everyone received the news of Wei Ci's death, they suddenly felt as if 2 bombs had exploded in their ears. The words Wei Ci's death became a hot topic in minutes. Madam's fan club couldn't wait to rush into the live stream room. Jiang Pengji was also shocked, but her mental fortitude was excellent. No matter how thunderous her heart was, she remained calm on the surface. Tell me in detail what happened. Jiang Pengji's tone was unprecedentedly cold. Every word contained murderous intent. Even though there was a charcoal brazier burning in the tent, one could still feel the obvious drop in temperature. Zixiao is dead? Could it be the group from Chuyu County? Yang Si held back the grief in his heart. He gritted his teeth and endured the surging sourness in his throat. He spoke with difficulty. Hearing that Wei Ci's body had been chopped up and thrown to the wolves as food, and that his bones had been gnawed clean and sent back, Jiang Pengji's state of mind was already unstable. She was as cold as ice, and her murderous intent rose steadily. The live stream room even lost its order. She was not in the mood to care about the explosive bullet screen, and turned her eyes to the 2 attendants behind Yang Si. Each of them was holding a corner of a piece of white cloth, and the white cloth was wrapped around a heavy object. That was where the smell of blood came from. Yang Si said, "The thieves in Chuyu County threw this on horseback in front of the camp." Jiang Pengji stood up coldly. The 2 attendants put down the white cloth, revealing a pile of human bones. It was stained with dark blood, and the flesh that wasn't completely eaten was still stuck to the bones. Many places had bite marks of dogs. Jiang Pengji only glanced at him once, and her murderous gaze softened a little. She raised her hand and ordered her attendants to leave. Although Yang Si was immersed in hatred, he also noticed the changes in Jiang Pengji. His gaze then fell on the pile of fresh human bones, and his lips moved for a while. My lord, Zixiao, Jiang Pengji scoffed and snorted. He's not dead. Yang Si, put away that mournful expression. This isn't Zixiao's human bones. Jiang Pengji squatted down and took out a piece of bone with blood and minced meat. The audience in the streaming room expressed that they could not stand such a large-scale taboo scene, and they all commented on the bullet screen to protect themselves. The bone age isn't right. Bone age? Jiang Pengji said with experience, the bone age of this set of bones is at least 35 years old. Zixiao is only in his early 20s. Also, although Zixiao has learned martial arts, he's at most at the level of square dancing. The bone age of this set of human bones is obviously that of someone who has been doing strenuous work for a long time. Moreover, Zixiao is on the skinny side, but this set of bones is different. It's at least a size stronger than Zixiao, so he's not Zixiao. Yang Si. Not Zixiao? Then where is Zixiao? Jiang Pengji secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but she appeared calm on the surface. She smiled and said, I'm afraid he's hiding somewhere, sitting back and watching the show begin. Yang Si's expression twitched. He looked at the pile of human bones on the ground with hidden bitterness, and he secretly gritted his teeth. This way, Zixiao. What tricks does he want to play this time? Jiang Pengji rubbed her chin and smiled faintly. In short, it's definitely beneficial to us. After Yang Si calmed down, he regained his wits. He frowned deeply and carefully tried to figure out Wei Si's train of thought. If Wei Si was killed by the second-in-command out of anger, who would benefit the most? The Red Lotus Group. Because this move cut off the second-in-command's escape route of relying on Lu Shi, in order to protect himself, he could only continue to ally with his old boss, the Red Lotus Group. His old boss was also happy to accept the second-in-command and his troops. Coupled with the convenience of the city gates of Chuyu County, they could delay Jiang Pengji to death. Not long after, Yang Si understood Wei Si's plan. He was angry and furious. This guy. Can't he tell me in advance what his plan is? He almost scared me out of my wits. Jiang Pengji said, plans can't keep up with changes. Maybe he came up with this idea on the spur of the moment. Yang Si asked, since Zixiao is fine, then my lord, what should we do tomorrow? Should we directly challenge him to a fight? Jiang Pengji nodded. Yes, our trusted advisor has been killed. We should at least put on a show. I don't want to act. Tomorrow, you'll go to the front lines. Yang Si was speechless. He didn't want to act either. Wei Si wasn't dead yet. Why should he waste his feelings? Jiang Pengji continued, Zixiao may have already instigated the one in Chuyu County to defect. Now that the Red Lotus Group is united on the surface, I'm afraid that both sides will suffer losses and fight to the death. We'll challenge them first. On the surface, we'll exert pressure, but in reality, we'll bide our time and observe the specific situation. Based on Jiang Pengji's understanding of Wei Si, this person had probably already made a comprehensive plan. If the Red Lotus Group didn't lose everything this time, Jiang Pengji's name would be read backwards. When Jiang Pengji received Wei Si's corpse, the Red Lotus Group outside the city also received the news. The scholar from the Red Lotus Group was not suspicious. Instead, he was secretly pleased. Although Wei Si's reputation on the battlefield was not prominent, he was in charge of the post-war pension and the stationing of the troops. He had a high reputation among the people of Fengyi County. As Lu Shi's right-hand man, he had been hacked to death and fed to the dogs. His corpse had even been sent to Lu Shi. He would wake up laughing even in his dreams. Lu Shi had made him suffer a lot. Now that Wei Si was dead, he could be considered to have regained some of his dignity. The scholar was certain that it was impossible for the deputy chief to side with Lu Shi. Naturally, he did not suspect that there was a trick. The two sides agreed to meet the next day to resist Lu Shi together. Before dawn, Jiang Pengji had already sent someone to the foot of the city to challenge them. The generals and soldiers were ready for battle. Their murderous aura shook the sky, and the war drums thundered. Even though they were far away, the people on the city walls could feel the repressed and resentful murderous intent. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. The deputy chief's face was a mixture of green and white. Panic and fear surfaced on the surface. The more it was like this, the more relieved the scholar from the Red Lotus group was. Chapter 658. When the second-in-command invited the higher-ups of the Red Lotus group into the city to discuss the grand plan, the Red Lotus group agreed without even thinking about it. However, they were a little more cautious. They brought 2,000 troops into the city, while the other 30,000 troops remained outside the city. If anything went wrong, these 30,000 troops would rush into the city at the first instance. The second-in-command and the military advisor of the Red Lotus group did not get along very well. Both were fed up with each other, but the current situation was unique and they had no choice but to work together. The scholar had already secretly made up his mind. After they beat back Lu Shi, he would be the first to capture the second-in-command and interrogate him. Now, for the sake of the bigger picture, he could only endure for the time being. He would let this boorish fellow run wild for a few more days. The scholar was secretly calculating. How could he know that the second-in-command was also plotting against him? Although the scholar and the others had brought 2,000 men with them, these 2,000 men were no match for the 30,000 troops in the city. On the surface, the two of them feigned civility, but in reality, they each had their own plans. No matter how the military drums sounded outside, the second-in-command still guarded the city and refused to come out. The soldiers guarding the city even cursed him loudly outside. Inside the city, the second-in-command held a banquet. The dancers and singers sang and danced to liven things up. At the same time, a group of prostitutes served them from the side. The drumming outside the city was like thunder. Even from such a distance, one could still hear it if they listened carefully. After 3 rounds of wine, they began to talk about the main topic. The second-in-command had a bitter expression on his face. He secretly rubbed his hands and grabbed the scholar beside him to complain. Didn't dare to say that he had kidnapped the hierarch in front of everyone, so he could only change the topic and make things difficult for himself. On account of the fact that they were from the same bloodline and were like brothers, he had to help him defeat Lu Shi outside the city. The scholar's smile was very stiff. He wanted to withdraw his hand, but the second-in-command held it tightly and could not do so. Don't be anxious. Thief Lu only has 10,000 troops. How can he be a match for us? The scholar forced a smile and comforted him. Actually, as long as our two clans put aside our former enmity and work together to occupy the city walls, the traitor Lu will retreat on his own in less than half a month, the second-in-command said, but right now, they're challenging us to a fight. If we don't fight, wouldn't we lose face? The scholar said. How much is face worth? As long as we can defeat Lu Shi, our sect will be renowned throughout the world. After that, the scholar analyzed Lu Shi's current awkward situation in detail, as if he was giving pointers to the country, and his words were reasonable and well-grounded. Everyone in the hall complimented and flattered the scholar, making him feel as if he was on cloud 9. He had completely forgotten about his previous failure. Outside the city, no matter how many people Jiang Pengji sent to challenge them to a fight, the people inside the city held their ground and refused to come out. They were determined to be mute. Seeing that the sky was getting darker and darker, Jiang Pengji's eyes turned frosty. Yang Si hurried over. His footsteps were hurried, and his breathing was heavy. He shouted, my lord, I've found out the exact news. Not long ago, there was an unusual movement in the Red Lotus Group's camp. About 2,000 people entered Chuyu County. It looks like they're ready to join forces. Jiang Pengji's eyes flickered slightly, and there was a slight smile on her lips. 2,000 people? Are there any important people among them? She crossed her arms over her chest and looked up at the sky. She pondered and calculated in her heart. Yang Si was already prepared. He opened his mouth and said, according to the scouts' report, the leader is probably an elite high-level member of the Red Lotus group. But it's too far away, so the details are not clear. But judging from the clothes they're wearing, there may be 23 high-level members, or the Red Lotus group was not a regular army. Most of the members were poor people. They wore whatever they had. Many of their clothes were taken from the dead and wrapped around their bodies casually. As long as they could keep warm and not freeze to death, it was fine. Who cared if they were clean or beautiful? Therefore, in the Red Lotus group, those who wore armor or bright clothes were basically people of status and prestige. The scouts couldn't get too close, but judging by their clothes, their identities were about 80% or 90%. Jiang Pengji narrowed her eyes, and there was a hint of danger in her gaze. She murmured, 23, Young Si continued, although it's not clear how many high-level elites the Red Lotus group has, just looking at this number, they've taken away more than half. Jiang Pengji sneered softly. In other words, the current Red Lotus camp is basically in a state of no leader? Jing Rong, what do you think are our chances of winning if we sneak attack their camp in the middle of the night? I think we can still fight them even if they have 30,000 troops. She had fewer troops on her side, but the overall conditions were much better. They had enough clothes to keep them warm, enough rations, and the military equipment was of high quality. The soldiers were also well trained. Their numbers were only 1/3 of the enemy's, but in the middle of the cold winter night, the advantage of numbers would be greatly reduced. They had launched a sneak attack in the middle of the night and caught the enemy off guard. Coupled with the crushing quality of the overall team, the Red Lotus group was still in a state of no leader. She felt that they had a good chance of winning. Yang Si laughed and said, in my opinion, maybe this is what Zixiao, the fox, is planning. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms in front of her chest and snorted. Zixiao has already instigated the forces in Chuyu County to rebel. The Red Lotus group has brought 2,000 troops into the city. There's going to be a good show tonight. The camp outside the city had been sneak attacked by Jiang Pengji, and the city was besieged on all sides and ambushed on all sides. The Red Lotus group had not died in vain. After making the decision, Jiang Pengji ordered the soldiers to continue challenging the enemy for a quarter of an hour, then sounded the gong to withdraw. Because the people in the city refused to fight for a long time, Jiang Pengji's side had been challenging the enemy for the whole afternoon, so much so that their morale was a little low. She asked the logistics department to prepare an adequate dinner for the soldiers, then let them rest in advance to recuperate and raise their morale again. That night, the bright white moon was covered by dark blue clouds. There was not much light on the ground. Jiang Pengji led the whole army out of the camp. In order not to arouse the vigilance of the people in the city, the torches in the camp were still burning. The Red Lotus group's camp was a full 2 hours' walk from their camp. Now that it was night time, the road was difficult to walk, so their pace was even slower. The soldiers guarding on the city wall still did not notice anything unusual. First of all, the torches in the camp were still burning. Second of all, when Jiang Pengji led the troops away, she went out from the back of the camp. The vision of the guards on the city wall was not that good, so they did not see it. At the same time, the city was brightly lit, and the sounds of singing and swallows could be heard. Among the shadows, one could see the graceful figures of women dancing. Everyone had reached an agreement. They were in a good mood and drank to their heart's content. Toasts were exchanged and wine cups clinked against each other. Rough and thunderous voices floated far out of the main hall. The second in command was drunk. His cheeks were pink, and his nose was red. Rubbed his stomach, and the urge to pee rushed to his head. He got up and pushed away the dancer who was attached to him. Said in a loud voice, "You guys eat and drink first. I'm going to relieve myself." Everyone did not suspect anything. Who among them had not gotten up 3 or 4 times to relieve themselves in the toilet? They drank too much, so they were holding in their pee. It was very uncomfortable. Chapter 659. He went to the toilet and secretly ordered his trusted subordinates to deploy troops. He asked them to quietly surround the main hall and avoid the 2,000 spies brought by the Red Lotus group. Finally, he pretended that nothing had happened and returned to the main hall to continue drinking and having fun with the others. The people in the hall were still drinking. No one realized that countless arrows had been aimed at them and that there was a murderous intent everywhere. The second-in-command was still urging them to drink. The scholar of the Red Lotus group had already drunk so much that he was sprawled on the table, his clothes disheveled. At the same time, a few dark shadows flipped into a remote house in the city. Sir, Wei Ci came out of the room with an indifferent expression. I'm here, we came late. Sir must have been startled. These men dressed in black and brown were the guards who had followed Wei Ci into the city. After entering the city, Wei Ci let them do as they pleased. They hid in Qiuyu County and did not need to worry about his safety. They would find an opportunity to meet up in the future. What's the situation outside? One of them said. They spread the news that Sir was killed and threw a skeleton that had been gnawed on by a wolf dog in front of our camp. Our Lord sent people outside to challenge us all afternoon, but the Red Lotus group stayed in the city and did not come out. At noon, 2,000 troops and horses entered the city and were well received. Wei Ci folded his hands in his sleeves and looked at the moon in the sky. He asked, "Do you know where those 2,000 people are temporarily staying?" One of them said, "The situation in the city is tense. We have investigated many times and have found out the specific location." Wei Ci smiled. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. "You have done well. Now listen to my orders. Go and tell those people that the second-in-command of the Red Lotus group is up to no good." He lured them into the city to surround and kill them. Tell them to quickly go and rescue them. The guards were puzzled, but they still nodded in agreement. Wei Ci added, "The terrain here is remote. I will be fine hiding here. Just do your own things." It was not safe for Wei Ci to hide with the second-in-command, so the second-in-command transferred him here. This place was secluded and quiet, with few people around. It was indeed a good place to hide and conceal his identity. The guards acknowledged the order and dispersed one after another. In the middle of the night was dark and windy, a murderous night. Jiang Pengji led all the troops. Their equipment was light and they rushed all the way to the Red Lotus group's camp. The Red Lotus group's campsite was very shabby. There were very few torches, and the campsite was in a mess. There weren't even a few patrolling guards. In this lousy weather, the temperature in the middle of the night was very touching. Most people couldn't stand the cold and found a place to squat. The discipline within the Red Lotus group was lax, and the patrolling soldiers were lazy as much as they could. During the day, most of their superiors had left, so they were more casual. When Jiang Pengji arrived with her troops, there was not even a guard by the camp's fence. Yang Si was so cold that he was shivering. He said shakily, "Could it be a trap?" Jiang Pengji snorted and said contemptuously, "If the Red Lotus group had brains, they wouldn't have been fooled by Zixiao and Enshui." Yang Si shut up. Ri's IQ wasn't low, but he would occasionally be tricked by the black-hearted Wei Ci, okay? As for Enshui, who was a three-faced spy, he didn't want to comment further. Jiang Pengji's mental brain was developed. She was sure that there were people in the camp, and it wasn't an ambush. Order the archers to prepare the fire arrows. Everyone held their breath. Hundreds of archers took out the oiled arrows and lit them. Then, they knocked the arrows and drew their bows, shooting them into the air. At the command, the sky was filled with arrows, leaving orange trails in the air. Then, they fell into the camp like rain. The soldiers in the camp were still in dreamland. The people on night watch outside yawned continuously. They hugged their weapons and leaned against the fence to sleep. When the second wave of fire arrows fell, the tents were already burning. Only then did someone notice the commotion. They shouted at the top of their lungs, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" They were too sleepy. Even though they shouted like that, not many people were woken up. They were in a flurry. When someone blew the horn to signal the enemy, the fire burned from one tent to another with the help of the night wind. Our enemy attack. Wake up. Messy shouts and messy footsteps. The crackling sounds intertwined into a soul-stealing song. Ras, the sound of hooves approached, the horses neighed and landed. The gate of the camp was violently broken open. The soldiers on both sides were about to step forward to resist when they saw a flash of silver light. 2 clusters of blood bloomed enchantingly. No one would have thought that Lu Shi's army, which had been shouting all afternoon, would launch a surprise attack on the Red Lotus Group's camp outside the city in the middle of the night. Dian Yan's speed was not as fast as Jiang Pengji's. The horse he was riding on lowered its head and strode at a steady pace. Although the horse's speed was not fast, its breathing was very steady. It followed closely behind Jiang Pengji and rushed into the camp. On horseback, Dian Yan killed anyone he saw. The 2 axes in his hands were deadly. He was born with great strength. When the axes fell, he could split a person in half from the middle. Their crooked intestines spilled all over the ground. The battle cries were like a huge stone thrown into a calm lake. With a bang, huge ripples spread out. The fire burned bigger and bigger. It almost dyed the entire camp a bewitching orange-red color. Kill. Because it was in the middle of the night, most of the Red Lotus Group's soldiers were asleep. They were awakened by the noise and fire outside. Out of survival instinct, they rushed out of their tents. Their hands were empty. They had no weapons at all. Outside, there were strong enemies eyeing them covetously. Even though they had 30,000 people, they were still defeated by Jiang Pengji's troops. They only cared about escaping and did not resist. Inside the city, according to Wei Si's request, the guard disguised himself as a member of the Red Lotus Group and, hurriedly, spread the news. At first, they did not believe it. But when they saw the fire spreading outside the city, and vaguely heard the battle cries and cries, their expressions changed. Having achieved his goal, the guard slipped away amid the chaos and sat back to watch the show unfold. At that moment, someone in the hall got up in a daze and wanted to relieve himself. As soon as he pushed the door open, he saw that there was something unusual in the dark night. The orange-red light of the fire dyed half the sky red. It was like a burning cloud, what's that? He was in a daze. As soon as he took a step forward, his mind quivered and he suddenly remembered. Wasn't that the place where they had set up camp? He sobered up from his drunkenness. Cold sweat broke out on his back. That was not all. With the help of the candlelight outside, he vaguely saw some strange figures in the distance. A sense of crisis rose from the soles of his feet to his head. It made his scalp tingle and his whole body tremble. Retracted his foot, not knowing how to react for a moment. What should I do? What should I do? What should he do? He was so anxious that he was out of his wits. He hurriedly walked back and tried to wake someone up. Halfway through his shout, he noticed a pair of malicious eyes staring at him from above, like a soul-reaping messenger. The second in charge snorted contemptuously, got up, and strode away. As soon as he stepped out, the door was immediately pulled shut. Kill them. The second in charge's voice was muffled. After a while, countless arrows pierced through the paper window and shot indiscriminately into the room. The arrowheads were still on fire. The arrows pierced into the wine, and the fire spread instantly. Help, help. The fire swept through the room, and the screams in the room gradually became weaker and shorter. The second in charge sneered, put his hands behind his back, and strode away. However, he had not gone far when he heard hurried footsteps coming from outside, accompanied by shouts of killing. They were getting closer and closer. Ri's face paled. Dozens of people rushed through the heavy vermilion door. It was actually the 2,000 men brought by the Red Lotus Group. Chapter 660. Sure enough, it's messed up. This Wei Zixiao has a very strong heart. Young-si panted heavily as he gripped the reins with all his might to prevent himself from falling off the horse's back. He looked rather pathetic. After being tossed and turned, the originally neat scholar's robe became wrinkled. Every time he took a deep breath, the cold wind would pour into his mouth. Young-si turned his head to look at Chuyu County. He saw that the night sky above the county had also been dyed orange-red, giving off a dangerous and enchanting light. This is called telepathy. Jiangpengji stood on the horse with a faint smile on her face. Young-si spat and said angrily, "What telepathy? I think he's just looking for trouble. Who knows who that pile of human bones belongs to? If we believe that Zixiao has been killed, I'm afraid we'll miss the battle. He's good, at least let us know." Speaking of this, Yang-si was also very depressed. Looking at the pile of human bones, Yang-si also thought that it was Wei Si's corpse. He was really sad for a while. If it wasn't for his lord who quickly identified it, he might still be in the dark. Hearing that, Jiang Pengji's slightly pale lips curled into a beautiful arc. Maybe this is also within his expectations. He knows that I won't be deceived by the corpses, let alone miss the battle. After she finished speaking, Jiang Pengji waved the long spear in her hand. The originally silver-white long spear had been soaked in fresh blood. The whole spear was scarlet. The warm fresh blood quickly cooled under the cold wind and solidified into blood clots. It was a little sticky and disgusting to the touch. She put down the long spear as if nothing had happened and looked in the direction of the county. Jing Rong, gather the troops and attack Chuyu County. I'll kill you while you're down. Yang-si said, "As you wish." Today, Chuyu County was already in a mess. Flames were spreading under the push of the wind. Shadows of people were moving about, and battle cries were shaking the sky. The guards on the city walls were also implicated. At this moment, a few black shadows approached the city gates and opened the bolts. They pushed together and heard a creaking sound. The tall city gate opened, reducing the trouble for Jiang Pengji and the others. Your subordinates welcome the Lord. The group of people who opened the door were the guards who accompanied Wei Si into the city. According to Wei Si's orders, they instigated the Red Lotus Group's alliance to break up. Taking advantage of the chaos, they secretly opened the city for Jiang Pengji's army. Where is Zixiao? One of them said, "Sir has been moved to a safe place and is waiting for the Lord." The corners of Jiang Pengji's lips curled up slightly. Her eyes reflected the dancing orange-red sparks. When the sparks reached her ears, she felt an inexplicable urge to heat up her ears. Quoting the words of the viewers in the live stream room, the streamer's smile was a little weak. Well done, generals and soldiers, follow me to kill the enemy. Holding a spear and slapping the horse, they rode ahead. They fought fiercely all night until dawn. The faint light broke through the night sky, and the earth welcomed a brand new day. The fire burned all night, and now only a few flames were still stubbornly holding on. After the flames licked the ground was scorched black. Gray-white smoke was still rising from the broken walls and ruins. As far as the eye could see, it was a scene of desolation. Jiang Pengji patted the black smoke on Little White's body and muttered, "Little White is about to be blackened by the smoke." As she spoke, she handed the reins in her hand to a soldier beside her and asked him to take Little White away to wipe it down. Yang-si had not slept all night. His eyes had already turned blue, and his eye bags were quite heavy. His fair cheeks were stained by the black smoke, and he looked dirty. Zixiao stayed here last night? This person really knows how to enjoy himself. He followed Jiang Pengji around, and he exercised a lot. He rode the horse frequently, and the skin on the inside of his thighs was rubbed with blisters several times. That was not all. His face, which had finally become a little fat, had now become thin again. Stubble covered his chin, and he looked a little down and out. What about Wei Si? This fellow was really good. He knew how to enjoy himself. This place was remote and quiet. It was not affected by the tangled battle last night at all. Ret the thought of how he was in a sorry state last night, and how Wei Si could still sleep soundly. Young Si suddenly felt unbalanced. As he spoke, the tightly shut door opened, and a tall scholar in blue walked out. Wasn't it Wei Si? My lord. Jing Rong. Wei Si did not sleep all night. He paced near the door at dawn, and his feet seemed to be grinding a hole in the ground. In a trance, he heard a familiar voice. His whole body quivered, and he hurriedly opened the door. It was indeed Jiang Pengji and Yang Si. Wei Si went forward to greet him. Yang Si put his hands in his wide sleeves, turned his head, and ignored him. It was Jiang Pengji who reacted. She stepped forward to greet him. Her eyes turned, and she looked Wei Si up and down. Jiang Pengji did not say anything, which made Wei Si nervous for no reason. My lord? Are you all right? She asked. Wei Si felt inexplicably guilty. He calmed his mind and maintained a calm expression. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, my lord. It's good that you're all right. Jiang Pengji passed by him. Her lips moved, and she said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I'll settle the score with you when we get back. Wei Si's body stiffened, and his calm expression faintly cracked. Yang Si did not understand. When he passed by Wei Si, he snorted softly. All things to play, he faked his death and deceived people's feelings. Wei Si smiled helplessly and bitterly. He believed that Jiang Pengji would guess his intentions and seize the opportunity to wipe out the Red Lotus Group in one fell swoop, take Chuyu County, and unify Wanzhou. Even if the two of them had not communicated beforehand, he believed that they had such a tacit understanding. It was just that, it seemed that he had overreached himself. Yang Si was fine. It was not difficult to fool him. Wei Si believed that he could deceive this person. But his lord could not. She was too shrewd. His experience in his previous life had already told him this. Just thinking about the scene of facing her directly made Wei Si have a faint urge to break into a run. Even so, Wei Si's disguise had almost been exposed, but Jiang Pengji had not completely exposed the thin veil. Wei Si felt that he could still be saved. His disguise had not been exposed, and she would not dig out all his secrets. But after what happened last night, he felt guilty. If he had known this would happen, he would have sent someone to inform her in advance. Wei Si felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, sat firmly in the seat of honor. After a simple meeting, the thing that Wei Si was worried about did not happen. Seeing this, Wei Si secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Si and Wei Si were responsible for the chores after the war. Soon, the two of them were occupied by the heavy work and had no time to think about other things. When counting the number of captives, Yang Si discovered something. Strange, where are the higher-ups of the Red Lotus Group? Did you instigate the second-in-command to defect? They had captured more than 40,000 captives. It could be said to be a great harvest, but they were all members of the Red Lotus Group. There were very few core members with a higher status. The desk in front of Wei Si was full of documents. His right hand, which was holding the pen, was stiff and sore. He simply switched to his left hand and continued writing. He lowered his eyes, and his thick and slender eyelids cast a little shadow. Wei Si said indifferently, I reckon that he was either burned to death or hacked to death. Anyway, he's dead. Yang Si was shocked. You fox, what did you do this time? Wei Si raised his lips and said, it's a waste of rations to keep him alive. How can he share the burden and relieve the lord of her burden? If we really recruit him, it will just be burying hidden dangers for our side. I'm afraid that he will bite back in the future. If that's the case, it's better to get rid of him as soon as possible and end all troubles once and for all. Yang Si was so shocked that he could not speak. Jiang Pengji's messenger, Wei Si recruited him and made use of him completely. After using him, he created a situation where the second-in-command was accidentally hacked to death. Chapter 661. When it came to scheming, Wei Ci was no match for Yang Si. After all, their styles were different. They both had hearts. The difference was that one was dirtier than the other. Yang Si was exasperated. All the crows in the world were black. Wei Ci, the damned fox, was laughing at others for being black. Where was his shame? Wei Ci and Yang Si were so busy with government affairs that their feet hardly touched the ground. Jiang Pengji had to think of a way to settle more than 40,000 captives. Otherwise, as time went on, it would be easy for variables to arise. According to the previous plan, some of them would be sent to Fengyi County to be laborers, while the rest would be left behind. Fengyi County and Shangyang County lacked manpower. Qingde County, which had just been conquered, also lacked manpower. After conquering Qingde County, the matter of rescuing the emperor had to be scheduled. From top to bottom, everyone was as busy as a spinning top. Jiang Pengji gave Wei Ci a separate task. It was not heavy, but it was not easy either. I promised Enchanting that I would give him 10% of the wealth and manpower. Now it's time to fulfill my promise. The Red Lotus Group's wealth will take a few more days to count. As for the captives, Jiang Pengji counted the number of captives they had captured. There were about 80,000 of them. Most of them were ordinary people. Wei Ci wanted to select 8,000 troops for Enchanting. Do as you see fit. Wei Ci cupped his hands in acknowledgement. On the afternoon of the fourth day after conquering Qiuyu County, Enchanting and a few of his sworn brothers walked out of their hiding place in the mountains. Our big brother, District Magistrate Lu, captured a lot of captives. He wants to give at least 7,000 to 8,000 of us. Is he really willing to do that? The group of brothers muttered, their hearts beating like drums. Ran Shui said calmly, he has to be willing even if he can't bear to. If Lu Shi wasn't this generous, he wouldn't have gone far. As soon as the group approached Qiuyu County, they were discovered by the patrolling guards. They identified themselves and Jiang Pengji personally received them. Brother Lu, how have you been? Ran Shui and the others had stayed in the mountains for a few days and hadn't had time to clean up. They looked a little down and out. If not for their extraordinary auras, they would have thought they were beggars. Compared to the young and promising Jiang Pengji, Enchanting's image was a little ugly. Ran Shui's sworn brothers did not make a sound. Only Enchanting spoke. I'm a straightforward person and I won't beat around the bush. I'm here today to make you fulfill your promise. Instead of feigning civility and probing each other, it would be better to go straight to the root of the problem and get straight to the point. Jiang Pengji was not annoyed. Instead, she said, Brethren, you came at the right time. I was just about to send someone to look for you. Thanks to Brother An's help, I was able to take down Qingde County so quickly and capture more than 81,000 remnants of the Red Lotus Group. As for the confiscated money, the account books are also here. Brethren, please check them. According to our original agreement, I definitely won't mistreat Brethren for 10 men and money. She knew very well that Enchanting alone had contributed 30% to her taking down Qingde County so quickly. Even if Enchanting didn't come to her door to collect the debt, Jiang Pengji would send someone to receive him. Ran Shui held the thick stack of account books in his hands and was secretly speechless. This was probably the most extravagant account book he had ever seen. The account books were not pieced together from bamboo slips. Instead, they were sewn together from bamboo paper of the same size. Our bamboo paper was expensive in Dongqing. It would be even more expensive if it was resold in Nanxing. RH flipped through a few pages. The records were extremely clear. Every account was clearly recorded. Jiang Pengji's attitude was so unperturbed that it made Enchanting and his men seem a little petty. Realizing this, Enchanting did not flip through the entire contents in detail. He quickly returned the thick account books to Jiang Pengji. I'll listen to your arrangements. Brother Lu is an open and above-board person. Why wouldn't I trust you? Ran Shui wore an appropriate smile on his face. Without batting an eyelid, he warmed up the atmosphere again. The two of them were talking. Wei Ci came in from outside the hall. The matter he reported happened to be related to Shui. The 8,100 people assigned to Shui had been selected. Ran Shui frowned slightly. His sworn brothers also reacted. They all felt their hearts skip a beat. They felt cheated. If Lu Shi were to be chosen for them, who knew if he would specifically choose the old, the disabled, or the seriously injured? What was the use of bringing such soldiers back? Jiang Pengji acted as if she did not see the change in their expressions. She took the initiative to invite Shui. What a coincidence. Brethren, why don't you accompany me to take a look? Ran Shui forced a smile. Then it would be impolite of me to decline. When they arrived at the drill ground, Shui realized that he had gauged the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. The captives Jiang Pengji had chosen for him were all well-formed and of suitable age. At a glance, they were all about the same size. Although the captives looked a little dispirited, that was because they had been defeated and captured. They felt lost and hopeless about their future. This outcome was far beyond Shui's expectations. As far as the eye could see, it was obvious that these captives had been carefully selected. They were all in the prime of their lives. Brother Lu, Shui did not know how to react. It was too pleasant, too unexpected. Among the crowd, Shui even saw some of the middle and small backbone members of the Red Lotus group. They were much stronger than ordinary people. If these people were trained well, they would definitely be able to create an army with decent combat power. Jiang Pengji stopped him from speaking. As long as Brother An is satisfied. There's no need to say anything else, lest we become estranged and hurt our brotherhood. Seeing this, Yang Xi's expression became a little uneasy. After enduring for a long time, he finally had an opportunity. He secretly tugged at Wei Ci, almost gnashing his teeth. Wei Zixiao, are you siding with an outsider? Wei Ci was speechless. Why do you say that? When have I sided with an outsider? Yang Xi said. Then what's the matter with the people you've chosen for Shui? Not to mention anything else, they were all young people, and some of them looked quite strong. So it's because of this. Wei Ci said with a smile, my lord has also promised, you don't have to worry. Don't just look at how good these people look on the surface. That's not the case behind the scenes. Most of them are loyal believers or small leaders of the Red Lotus group. They exploit the people, bully their neighbors, and commit many evil deeds. If we keep them, I'm afraid it will affect the internal atmosphere of the entire Wanzhou. It's better to abandon them. The most important thing was that they were too deeply poisoned by the teachings of the Red Lotus group. They were basically malignant tumors, and they couldn't be left alive. Yang Xi was astonished, so shocked that he couldn't speak. Wei Ci narrowed his eyes, expressing his loyalty. I'd rather cut my own flesh and give up my life than harm my lord in this life. Shui still has his uses. If we use old, weak, and crippled soldiers to fool him, I'm afraid he'll hold a grudge against my lord. However, if we use these 8,000 young and strong men as an explanation, he won't be able to tell that something is fishy in a short time. We can still make use of them a few more times. Jing Rong, what are you looking at? Yang Xi had finally regained his composure, but he became strange because of Wei Ci's words. Ri's gaze fell behind Wei Ci. Wei Ci was puzzled at first, then he became flustered. Turned his head and saw a very innocent-looking person leaning against the porch. Jiang Pengji had an expression that said, you guys continue chatting, I'm just looking at the scenery. Wei Ci was speechless. How long had she been listening? Wei Ci's eyes turned, and he used his gaze to ask Yang Xi. Chapter 662. Wei Ci received the hint from Yang Xi. He carefully recalled what he had just said, and the color of blood gradually faded from his cheeks. It seemed that he had just said something that he shouldn't have. He tried to open his mouth to change the topic, but his lips moved for a while. He couldn't even say a word. It was as if a pair of invisible hands were pinching his throat, forcing him to swallow his next words. An indescribable feeling spread from his toes and rushed straight to his brain. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms in front of her chest and leaned against the pillar. Her gaze fell on Wei Ci with a bit of fierce scrutiny. Yang Si keenly sensed the change in the atmosphere and swallowed nervously. He felt that the atmosphere between the two of them was a little strange. Logically speaking, Wei Ci's expression of loyalty was accidentally heard by the Lord. As the Lord, shouldn't she be happy? Similarly, Wei Ci's expression of loyalty was heard by the person involved. Even if he wasn't shy, he couldn't be afraid, right? In the end, Yang Si felt that he seemed to have smelled something unusual. Jiang Pengji retracted her gaze and said to Wei Ci, I happened to pass by. You guys continue talking. With that, she simply turned around. At that moment, Wei Ci realized that Jiang Pengji was wearing straw sandals instead of wooden clogs. No wonder she walked like she was floating and didn't make any sound. It wasn't until Jiang Pengji's figure disappeared from his field of vision that Wei Ci slumped his shoulders in a deflated manner. His eyebrows were slightly furrowed. He said to Yang Si weakly, "Lend me a hand." Yang Si wanted Wei Ci to fall, but he held back in the end. What's wrong with you and the Lord? Yang Si was conflicted for a while. His eyebrows knitted together. I think you and the Lord are a little strange. To say it was strange was a euphemistic way of saying it. To put it bluntly, did the two of them have an affair in private? There was a cat scratching his heart, making it itch. Wei Ci rubbed his eyebrows with a headache and glanced at him. What's strange? Yang Si pinched his chin and glanced at Wei Ci from time to time. Could it be that my previous guess was correct? Do you really have some unspeakable dirty thoughts about your Lord? Or does the Lord have the same kind of feelings for you? Although men are popular nowadays and people don't have much resistance to this kind of thing, you're 6 years apart and you're both monarchs and ministers. This matter is not easy to deal with. As he spoke, Yang Si rubbed his hands. Wei Ci was already fuming with anger, yet Yang Si was still coming up with lousy ideas. Otherwise, Zixiao, you should find someone to marry. If he was worried about his fate, he could take a concubine. At least he would have a woman by his side. The balance of yin and yang was the right way to go. You could have taken the water route, but you chose to take the land route. Although you are older than the Lord, there is a difference in seniority. You can't just suppress the senior. This is disrespectful. If you really want to force it, won't you make me painful? Yang Si was halfway through his sentence when Wei Ci rewarded him with an elbow strike that was neither light nor heavy. Yang Si was caught off guard and his expression was twisted. Shameless sneak attack. Wei Ci chuckled and raised his brows. Take a stroll in the martial arts arena? What water or land routes? This guy really didn't know how to restrain himself when he started talking dirty. He knew even more than that wastrel Fengzhen. Although Yang Si was still alone in his 20s, his private life was quite rich. Yang Si sucked in a breath of cold air and grimaced. Fine, I'll leave then. I tried to advise you out of goodwill, but not only do you not know how to be grateful, you even made a false accusation. He had to teach Wei Ci a lesson today. When they arrived at the martial arts arena, Yang Si took out his sword, rolled up his sleeves, and pulled out his sword to face Wei Ci. Wei Ci returned the favor. Not long after, Jiang Pengji received news that the two strategists were fighting at the martial arts arena. Not only was Jiang Pengji dumbfounded, but the audience in the streaming room was also confused. Zhang Chengwai, did I hear it wrong? Why did Yang Si and Wei Ci fight? Aren't they literati? Mala flavor rabbit leg, #picknose. Who told you that literati can't fight? Do you think that the literati of this era are the same as the literati of China after the Song dynasty? They can't carry anything on their shoulders or lift anything with their hands. They have learned the 6 arts of a gentleman. Horse riding, archery, and swordsmanship are also compulsory courses. Sauce-flavored chicken feet. I think you have some misunderstanding about literati. The literati of ancient times were basically proficient in both the pen and the sword. For example, my idol, Li Bai, was a genuine swordsmanship expert and the most respected in the martial arts world. Think about it, how chaotic the ancient society was. How could they not know how to fight when they could sneer and roam around outside? Otherwise, they would have been crushed to death long ago. Therefore, it's normal that Beauty CI and the others know how to fight. Country bumpkin, I'm shivering. The person above, please don't mention it. When Li Bai is mentioned, I think of the fear of being dominated by Li Bai's green lotus sword. When we were pioneering, there were always 3 parallel swords. One explosion destroyed one group. Li Bai, the god, fought 25 of them without panting. Senzatsi Pingjian, no, you've all gone off topic, haven't you? Beauty CI and Yang Si are fighting. Will they be alright? At this moment, the audience in the streaming room remembered the main point of the matter. They summoned Jiang Pengji to resolve the conflict between the two so that nothing bad would happen. Jiang Pengji had an indolent expression and rested her chin on her hand lazily. 2 rookies pecking at each other. What can happen? The 150,000 viewers were speechless. My lord, it hurts. Rookies, no, Wei Xi and Yang Si had exchanged dozens of blows. Yang Si barely won by half a move. He liked to eat but did not like to exercise. Naturally, his swordsmanship was rusty. Even though Wei Xi went easy on him like a flood, he was still exhausted and sweating profusely. After a round of fighting, he was panting like a dog. On the other hand, Wei Xi's face was not red and his heart was not beating. No, who was the sickly one? Zixiao, be honest. What's going on between you and the Lord? Wei Xi put his sword back into its scabbard and said casually, what's going on between me and her? You're just being stubborn. Do you really think that my eyes are just for show? You're not the only smart person in this world. Everyone else's eyes are bright. Yang Si panted and suddenly recalled the conversation he had with Jiang Pengji that day. He said earnestly, it's best if there's nothing. The Lord is young and his temperament is not yet determined. If he gets involved with men out of curiosity, you'll be guilty. But I heard from the Lord that he seems to have a sweetheart. After Wei Xi heard this, he froze on the spot. His feet seemed to be nailed to the ground and he could not move an inch. A sweetheart? Yang Si nagged and repeated Jiang Pengji's words that day. He hoped that he could use reality to extinguish the possible hidden dangers. Whether it was from the Lord's or Wei Xi's point of view, it would be very dangerous if the two of them developed a relationship other than that of a ruler and a minister. Firstly, Wei Xi was 6 years older. People would only say that the Lord was young and ignorant. Wei Xi fawned on her and shamelessly seduced a young man. He was degenerate. The two of them could have been a ruler and a minister for a lifetime and become a legend. Why did they have to bear eternal infamy? Secondly, the Lord already had a girl he liked. If Wei Xi could not stop now, he would not even be able to be a ruler and a minister in the future. Out of concern for his friend, Yang Si felt that it was better to nip the bud in the bud, regardless of whether the two of them had any signs of it. But, why did it not have any effect? At first, Wei Xi's face was still a little green. As Yang Si spoke, it gradually turned into embarrassment and a faint blush hung on his face. Yang Si was speechless. Chapter 663. There was nothing wrong with it. Wei Xi coughed lightly, and his expression returned to calmness. Only his ears were bloodshot, so red that tiny blood vessels could be seen. Of course, he could tell who the sweetheart Jiang Pengji was talking about was. Facing the ignorant Yang Si, he felt an inexplicable sense of shame. However, Yang Si's words just now were not without reason. The Lord was still young. She was in her teens and in her prime. What about Wei Zixiao? How could he be only 6 years older than her? I still have some matters to attend to. I'll leave first. Wei Si's voice was a little vague, as if he was deliberately avoiding something. Yang Si would not let him leave so easily. Changing the topic was useless against him. You haven't explained yet? You want to send me away just like that? Yang Si sat on the folding stool and calmed his breathing. Seeing that Wei Si was about to leave, he hurriedly grabbed his sleeve. His expression became serious, and he said earnestly, Zixiao. Be rational. Don't do anything stupid. Wei Si smiled. It was like the sunlight that melted away ice and snow. It was neither glaring nor warm, and the temperature was just right. I know what I'm doing. She'll understand when she's older. In another 5 or 6 years, he would be 27 or 28 years old. He would be about to enter middle age. She would eventually lose interest. Yang Si naturally would not pester him when he heard him say that. It was fine as long as Wei Si knew what he was doing. Heaving a long sigh of relief, Yang Si sat on the folding stool. He stretched out his legs and hung them down without a care for his image. He hummed a strange tune. While he was feeling pleased, he was caught off guard. His lord's voice came from behind him. Where's Zixiao? Yang Si was so scared that he almost fell off the folding stool. Fortunately, he knew how to maintain his appearance and restrained himself from embarrassing himself. He got up slowly, flicked his sleeves, and folded his sleeves in a bow. Zixiao said he had something to attend to, so he left first. My lord, are you here to look for him? Jiang Pengji crossed her arms in front of her chest, and the corners of her lips curled into an inexplicable smile. No, I'm here to look for you. Yang Si was speechless. Wait, the atmosphere felt a little off. Inexplicably, Yang Si had an illusion that Jiang Pengji was here to settle scores with him. No, maybe, it was not an illusion. Jiang Pengji didn't say anything. She just stared at Yang Si with a faint smile, making the latter's hair stand on end. After a while, she said, Jing Rong, do you still remember the sweetheart I mentioned before? Yang Si, wait, please don't tell him that the so-called sweetheart that the Lord mentioned is Wei Si, right? His face darkened. He carefully recalled the image of the person Jiang Pengji had described. The more he thought about it, the more hopeless he felt. Master. You and Zixiao. Yang Si paused for a moment, not knowing how to persuade him. He was also a person who had been in the prime of his youth, so he knew the temperament of young people. They loved to be stubborn with others. The more the outside world tried to stop them, the more it stimulated their competitiveness. To the Lord, perhaps she liked Wei Si because she was attracted to his looks. She only felt that he was good-looking. At most, it was 80% curiosity and 20% fondness. Once there was a strong external force obstructing them, it would trigger the Lord's stubborn temper. Even a 20% liking would turn into a 100% liking. After all, you're both men. Have you thought about how the two of you will carry on the family line in the future? Yang Si spoke weakly. He and Wei Si were best friends, so he could persuade him not to worry too much. However, he could not do so when it came to Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji said, why can't I? Zixiao is not a sentimental person. I don't say that he will be faithful to one person until the end, but if you have the idea of letting other women carry on the family line for him, I'm afraid that all your efforts will be in vain. You'll have schemed for nothing. Yang Si obviously misunderstood. He said vaguely and embarrassedly. What's more? My lord still has many years to live. Why delay yourself and Zixiao? You're still young. He's 6 years older than you. His lord, who was 27 or 28 years old, could still be considered young and promising. However, Wei Ci would be in his early 30s at that time. They were really not suitable for each other. Yang Si only felt that he had tried his best to persuade her. He had said everything that needed to be said, but the person in front of him did not care at all. She said, "Of course, I won't let other women touch him. I have a serious obsession with cleanliness." Yang Si did not know what obsession with cleanliness was, but he could understand some of it based on the context. He could not help but have a headache. He finally understood. It must be that his lord lacked physiological knowledge. She did not know that men could not have children. Perhaps his lord thought that two men could also have children. Zixiao is a man. My lord is also a man. He felt that it was a little ridiculous that he was explaining this to a young man who was almost 18 years old. Jiang Pengji was amused. And then? Yang Si said, "Men can't have children." Jiang Pengji said, "I know." So? Yang Si was almost choked to death by her words. He could not breathe. She knew that men could not have children, but she did not allow Wei Ci to have children with other women. Was Wei Ci going to die without descendants? He simply gave up and said, "You and Zixiao are both men. It's impossible for you to have children." Jiang Pengji lowered her eyes and snorted. She said, "Wrong." Yang Si was stunned. What was wrong? It's true that Zixiao is a man, but everything else is wrong. Even though Yang Si's IQ was above that of ordinary people, he felt that his brain was not enough to process it at that moment. He could not react at all. He had just said, "My lord and Zixiao are both men. It's impossible for them to have children." But his lord had said, "It's true that Zixiao is a man. Everything else is wrong." In other words, "My lord is a man" was wrong. "It's impossible for them to have children" was also wrong. He was terrified to think about it carefully. Yang Si's expression changed again and again. His mind was in a mess. It was as if someone had thrown hundreds of hornets' nests at him. The bees were buzzing non-stop. My lord," Yang Si was so scared that he could not even speak properly. Jiang Pengji blinked and said, "I still have something to do. I'll leave first." After she finished speaking, she left Yang Si, who was stunned by the bombardment, and waved her sleeves without taking away a single cloud. The audience in the live stream watched the whole process. They were basically divided into two factions. One was worried that the streamer's gender would be exposed, while the other was worried that Yang Si would be scared silly. Huang Xiaotian, a man of few words, "This is bad. If Yang Si knows the streamer's gender, will he run away?" When Wenkuoren Han Wenqing, not considering the power of the streamer's father, the streamer herself can be considered the lord of a prefecture. She has tens of thousands of soldiers in her hands. Yang Si is a scholar. How can he run? Run away with his head? The streamer is black-hearted and ruthless. Wei Ci is ruthless and ruthless. If the two of them work together, they won't be able to escape even if they grow wings. Zhou Zikai, a man of eloquence, "I don't understand. Why did the streamer reveal her gender at this time?" Yi Buxiu, a man of integrity, "I can understand. The streamer has now recovered all of Wanzhou. Although she can't crush all the heroes, she can't be taken lightly either. It's wise to reveal her true identity at this time. Before she is officially exposed, she can let the people around her be prepared." Obviously, through the previous test, Yang Si could accept the setting that Jiang Pengji was a woman. As long as he could stabilize the few scholars under him, the rest would be easy to handle. Chapter 664. Some were worried, and naturally, some felt sorry for him. Wang Jieshi, "I feel sorry for Yang Si. He's probably scared out of his wits. Even the onlookers were fooled by the streamer, let alone him. Clever and skillful Yu Wenzhou, actually, I'm thinking. Perhaps Yang Si was frightened not because the streamer is a woman, but because, such a burly, heroic, valiant, and battle-savvy lord is actually a woman. Can you imagine the King Kong Barbie version of Neza? Lo CG Lianmeng, previous poster, all of you are toxic. Hahaha, speaking of which, the streamer is almost 18. How's her cleavage? There's also her monthly menstruation. It seems that she hasn't mentioned it even though I've been following the updates for so long. Gui Kai Guofengxiu. Speaking of this, I suddenly remembered something that the little angel Li Hanmei said. It can be said to be a classic saying, such a stalwart man as the Lord disguised as a woman hasn't had a good look yet. Don't you think it's funny? Jiang Pengji glanced at the live stream and secretly rolled her eyes. Streamer V, prepare early. I plan to officially confess my identity at this alliance meeting to rescue the Emperor. I'll beat up whoever dares to make noise. It's a little exciting to think about being appointed as the governor of Wanzhou as a woman. On the other side, Yang Si was already scared out of his wits. Just as the audience in the live stream complained, he didn't know whether the Lord is actually a woman or such a Lord is actually a woman was scarier. He hurriedly looked for Wei Si. He stammered, and only asked after a long while. My lord, my lord. Yang Si stammered for a while. Wei Si was at a loss and wished he could say it for him. Wei Si held the brush with both hands and wrote well. He asked, what's wrong with the lord? He handled official affairs quickly. She did two things at once and did not interfere with each other. Yang Si quietly made a circle with his hands in front of his chest. His posture looked extremely wretched. A woman? Wei Si's hand paused and he nodded. Yang Si's face darkened. He wished he could grab Wei Si's collar and ask, when did you know? I knew it from the beginning. Wei Si asked him calmly, you couldn't tell? Yang Si was so angry that he wanted to laugh. He felt that everything he had experienced today was absurd. It was a nightmare. Master. How can I tell from her appearance? Yang Si felt depressed. If he was blind, then wouldn't everyone in the world be blind? During the Battle of Qingda County, I was in the vanguard with the Lord. Where did she have any trace of being a woman? Charging more fiercely than anyone else, killing more ruthlessly than anyone else, using more strength than anyone else, and acting more arrogantly than anyone else. Was this how a noble lady of an aristocratic family behaved? Wei Si's gaze flickered and he said, who told you that women can't fight bravely and well? Yang Si choked on his words and almost couldn't catch his breath. You knew from the start that she was a woman, yet you still pledged loyalty to her. Are you crazy? At this point, Yang Si felt as if his heart had been shot by another arrow, because he had once joked with Jiang Pengji that he looked forward to the ascension of the throne when she gave birth to the emperor concubine. Damn, he had such a cheap mouth. Wei Si didn't care at all. His thick and slender eyelids drooped slightly. He said calmly, she led the troops to take down Xiangyang district. She conquered Qingan district, Maolin district, and Jiaoping district in 3 battles. She took down Shangyang County from the Feng family and took down Qingda County in half a month. In a year and a half, she has become the de facto lord of Wanzhou. She has tens of thousands of soldiers in her hands. She has the right to compete for the divine tripod of Zhozhou. You know my aspiration. I only hope that the world will be unified and the rivers will be clean and the seas will be peaceful. As long as I can achieve my aspiration, what difference does it make to me if the Lord is a man or a woman? Yang Si was speechless and couldn't answer. After a while, he asked in a low voice, who else knows about the Lord's gender? Only Si, you, and Huayu. The others don't know. Wei Si stopped writing and spread out the bamboo slip that he had written. He dried the ink and said, but even if the others know, they probably won't have much of a reaction. Feng Zisher has a prodigal character. He's unrestrained and does whatever he wants. He sees the secular world as dirt. Qiguan Wenjing, even if he doesn't know the truth, I'm afraid he's aware of it. As for Su Xiaoyu, he has an extraordinary friendship with the Lord. He's loyal and has accompanied the Lord since she was born. How could he have a change of heart? Yang Si was surprised. Feng Huaiyu actually knows? He had been worried about Feng Jin just now. After all, based on Feng Jin's upbringing, this person was the most unlikely to accept the current situation. What happened in the end? He was someone in the know. Wei Ci said very calmly, yes, he knows. Ci listened to Huayu's idle talk. His family's Changxing was born during the earthquake. Shangjing was destroyed. 9 out of 10 houses collapsed, and there were countless casualties. Huayu's eldest daughter, Changxing, was personally delivered by the Lord. Do you think he wouldn't know? Yang Si was speechless. He felt that his worldview had suffered a devastating blow. After calming down, Yang Si suddenly remembered something. The Lord has hidden it from the world for so many years. Why did she suddenly tell me? Wei Ci said, you still don't know? The power of the governor of Wanzhou isn't big, but it's not small either. It's just the right time to expose her identity. Let me tell you, I'm just testing the waters and testing the bottom line of acceptance. Just wait, before the rescue mission is over, the Lord will definitely reveal her identity. Yang Si rubbed his eyebrows. There was too much information. He needed time to calm down. The Lord is so calculative. Thinking of the women's camp, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. It turned out that she had already started planning and laying the groundwork. How could I have gotten to this point without some calculation? Wei Ci knew that not only could she become the governor of the province, but she would also become the ruler of the world and compete for the final winner of the 9 provinces' divine cauldrons. Yang Si's mind was in a mess. He found that once he accepted the setting that the Lord was a woman, it seemed quite interesting. At least, when Jiang Pengji slept with Wei Zixiao in the future, Yang Si wouldn't have to be so conflicted. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered something. How is the relationship between the Lord and the old master? Wei Ci glanced at him and said, not bad. Yang Si pinched his chin, his heart bubbling with black water. I heard from Feng Huaiyu that the Lord has a brother born of a mistress. If he didn't know Jiang Pengji's gender, Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji's father and son, power was clearly divided. Yang Si wouldn't have thought much about it. But now, he was a little worried. No matter how good a daughter was, she was still a daughter. After all, she had to get married and have children. How could the child be better than a son? Wei Ci looked down, his eyes filled with a cold light. I know what you're worried about. That bastard is indeed a hidden danger. If he knew his place, Wei Ci couldn't be bothered with him. If he was tormented, he didn't mind being more ruthless. If the Lord wanted to blame him, that would be for the best. The two of them would take the opportunity to cut off all the ties that shouldn't exist. Under such an atmosphere, Jiang Pengji received further instructions to rescue the emperor. Many forces prepared to gather at Huangshui to discuss important matters. Huangshui? Jiang Pengji glanced at the map of Dongqing. Huangshui was a tributary of Dongqing's mother river. It was only a little narrower than the main trunk. Chapter 665. After conquering Qingde County, Jiang Pengji did not immediately set off to rescue the emperor. Instead, she spent half a month stabilizing her power. She generously gave the 8,000 captives and 10% of the money to Enchui, making him feel a little embarrassed. Enchui was a man with many tricks up his sleeves. He emphasized kindness and authority, and he was clear about rewards and punishments. He handled the 8,000 captives well. He stayed in Qingde County for 2 days, then left with his men and money, heading for Huangshui. Jiang Pengji was so busy that she had no time to think about her personal feelings. Wei Ci, on the other hand, heaved a long sigh of relief. The biggest gain from attacking Qingde County this time was not gathering the territory of Wanzhou, but taking over the manpower of the Red Lotus Group. Tens of thousands of captives were nothing in other large-scale battles, but for Jiang Pengji, they were still very beneficial. After a whole year of rest and construction, Fengyi County was now the most prosperous and developed place in Wanzhou. Shanyang County was second, and Qingde County was at the bottom. Qingde County had been exploited by the Red Lotus Group many times, and there was a heavy population loss. To attract more refugees and develop the local economy, development and construction became the top priority. Jiang Pengji racked her brains for half a night, planning to assign the people under her to various places. I'm still too short of manpower. I hope I can poach some good people from the alliance meeting to rescue the emperor. Even though Jiang Pengji was energetic and full of physical strength, she was so tired that her eyes were bloodshot when faced with such a big problem. Fortunately, she had the experience of starting from scratch. She had accumulated a wealth of experience in the construction of a county. Other areas could be slightly modified and then copied. Fengyi County had an iron mine, and Qingde County also had a natural advantage. It was rich in coal, so she could make use of it. However, the most important thing at the moment was to select new soldiers and assign the captives to reclaim wastelands, build roads, and build houses. Although she had taken over Qingde County, it was actually not easy. The entire army had barely stopped moving, and the soldiers were exhausted. After taking over Qingde County, she still had a lot of things to do. Settling down the captives and squeezing their labor was just a small matter. Jiang Pengji had more troublesome matters to deal with, such as the aftermath of the soldiers who died in battle, the compensation for their families, and the arrangements for the injured and disabled soldiers. It would be spring in a month or two. She could temporarily stop the progress of other matters, but she could not delay the arrangements for the spring plowing, the selection and training of the new soldiers, and the arrangement of manpower in each county. Although she had become the actual governor of Wanzhou, it looked glorious on the surface. On the inside, she was treading on thin ice and walking on a tightrope. If it came down to it, she didn't have enough troops. If something went wrong, she would be in a terrible situation. 20 to 30,000 soldiers could guard a county, but it was difficult to intimidate a prefecture. Therefore, the recruitment of new soldiers and the expansion of military strength were the top priority at the moment. Under the pressure of the heavy workload, a few strategists were so tired that they wanted to move their homes to the government office. Jiang Pengji also found it difficult to rest. Apart from these matters, Jiang Pengji also had to coordinate the troops in various places and mobilize the troops to prepare for the rescue of the emperor. God! Give me an all-purpose shovel. Jiang Pengji hated official business the most. Instead of dealing with words all day, she would rather have a good fight with someone. What does my lord need a shovel for? Yang Si was surprised. Ever since Yang Si found out about Jiang Pengji's true gender, he thought that he would be very awkward, but it turned out that he had been thinking too much. As long as she didn't deliberately remind him, Yang Si subconsciously treated her as a man. Occasionally, when he thought about it, he still felt that it was like a dream. Such a valiant and brave lord who fought against 100 men alone, charged and broke through enemy lines, attacked cities and conquered lands. How could the omnipotent lord be a girl? Every time he had such doubts, he couldn't help but glance at Jiang Pengji's chest. It clearly didn't have the slightest curve. He looked at her face again. Her facial features were regular, and there was a heroic spirit in her eyes and brows. Indeed, she didn't have the masculinity that a man should have. However, nowadays, men like to wear flowers and powder in their hair and wear red and green. Based on such standards, Jiang Pengji could already be considered a man. So, this girl was fake, right? Jiang Pengji said, using a shovel to poach someone, Jing Rong. Don't you think that we are too short of people? This doesn't make sense. No matter what, your lord is sitting on a prefecture. Not to mention how I can make a name for myself, but I'm not as good as the top, but I'm better than the bottom. Why is there no talent to seek refuge with? She didn't expect the people to seek refuge with to be top-notch strategists, but there should be third-rate talents, right? What was the result? The number of talents that others yearned for was in the double digits, but there wasn't a single mid-level talent. Yang Si didn't know what science was, but he could still understand it in the context. He said, "My lord, have you forgotten that the old master hasn't retired yet?" Jiang Pengji didn't speak. Lu Shi was the magistrate of Chongzhou. He was in the prime of his life. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, he had a car, a house, a successful career, and a mature, steady, and doting personality. He was definitely a wealthy husband. Jiang Pengji was indeed young and promising. She had great potential, but how could she be more attractive than a ready-made successful person like Lu Shi? If they really wanted to seek refuge with the Lu family, Lu Shi would be their first choice to seek refuge with. Yang Si thought that he had given her a blow and eased his tone. "My lord, don't be anxious. This matter needs to be discussed at length." Compared to talent, Yang Si was more afraid of a lack of time. If they were given enough buffer time and development time, with Wei Si's connections and the talents they nurtured themselves, would they be afraid of a shortage of people? Jiang Pengji nodded, her brows slightly furrowed. That's true. Haste makes waste. She had plenty of time to slowly build up. The situation in the world was getting more and more severe. Only by laying a solid foundation could one remain invincible. After Jiang Pengji discussed with everyone, she planned to set off for the rescue of the emperor in half a month. During this period, she would go to various places in Wanzhou and be so busy that her feet wouldn't rest. At that moment, an unexpected visitor was slowly entering the territory of Wanzhou, approaching Xiangyang district. "Father, I just heard that the war in Qingde County has ended. Lu Shi is really amazing. It's only been half a month." A young man in his early 20s bent over and entered the carriage. His face was filled with surprise and admiration. "If I knew it would be so soon, I wouldn't have changed my route." Their whole family had taken refuge. As soon as they arrived at the border of Wanzhou, they heard that there was a war in Qingde County. The two sides were locked in a fierce battle. To prevent accidental injuries, their family had to change their route and take a detour. They were only half a day's journey from Xiangyang district, but the war had actually ended. A middle-aged man sat upright in the carriage. He looked to be about 37 or 38 years old. The woman beside him had taken good care of herself. At a glance, one could tell that she usually lived like a prince. She didn't do any chores. She looked much younger than her actual age. She seemed to be in her early 30s. The woman had an excellent bearing. She was reserved and elegant. Seeing that the young man's head and shoulders were stained with snow, she couldn't help but raise her hand to brush them off with a handkerchief. The middle-aged man stroked his beard and chuckled. A son should be like this. Lu Zhongqing is so blessed. After all, with the current situation, he, a mere county magistrate, could not protect this territory. However, after a few attempts, Qing realized that it was impossible to fire him and leave. Once Huang Song conquered Fufeng County, he would force his way in. How could that do? Qing received the secret letter from his uncle, Qing Jing. After pondering for a long time, he decisively packed up his belongings and prepared to flee with his family. Qing handed over Suian County to Huang Song for the sake of his uncle, Qing Jing, hoping that he would treat the people well. Qing had never thought of returning to the Langia Qing clan because Langia County was also an important place for military strategists. Now that the world was in chaos, that place was even more unsafe. After much thought, Qing set his sights on the largest force in the north, the Lu family. He immediately decided to seek refuge with Lu Shi. Firstly, he and Lu Shi had been friends through letters for several years. They were gentlemen's acquaintances, and he trusted the Lu family. Secondly, Dongqing was fragmented internally, and various forces were rising. The Lu family kept a low profile, and their overall strength was the strongest. Seeking refuge with the Lu family gave him a sense of security. Thirdly, Lu Shi had saved the couple's lives. Based on the principle of not leaving fertile water to outsiders, of course, he would prioritize the Lu family. Why didn't he seek refuge with Lu Shi? Lu Shi and Lu Shi were father and son. It didn't matter who they sought refuge with. Of course, they would choose the closest one. The young man listened to Ching Cheng's words and muttered, I thought that the person favored by the fifth uncle would definitely not be bad. Thinking of Ching Ching frowned. To be honest, he still had a grudge against Huang Song's birth as a eunuch. He really couldn't understand why Ching Jing would choose such a lord. Not long after, Xiangyang district was within reach. Ching Cheng's convoy consisted of dozens of carriages. It looked mighty and powerful. Without any suspense, they were stopped by the guards at the city gate and asked to check their belongings. Ching Cheng was very cooperative and led his wife and children out of the carriage. The guard lifted the curtain of the carriage to check. His eyes were filled with astonishment. The carriage was filled with bamboo slips and books bound with bamboo paper. It was stuffed to the brim. No wonder the horses had such a hard time pulling the carriage. It was so heavy. The guard was not blind. Those who could afford to read were mostly from well-to-do families. Those who had so many books were definitely from noble families. Ching Ching reported his family name. When the guard heard it, he didn't dare to delay and quickly sent someone to inform the big shots in the government office. The other party claims to be from the Ching family of Langia. His name is Ching Cheng. Su Ke had been busy all night last night. His eye bags were swollen and bruised. He looked like he had overindulged in sex and injured himself. He wanted to catch up on sleep and fight again when he woke up, but the messenger told him that Ching Cheng had arrived. Qiguan Rang was surprised. Who is this person? He had never heard of him. Su Ke knew Ching Cheng. Although he didn't interact much with Ching Cheng, he admired Ching Cheng's integrity and secretly admired him. Although he isn't famous, he is a respectable scholar. If the Lord knows he's here, she will be very happy. Hearing Su Ke's words, Qiguan Rang's interest was piqued. He wanted to meet this scholar that Su Ke praised. Su Ke continued, but I don't know why Master Cheng is here. Why did he come to Xiangyang district at this time? When he saw Ching Cheng's convoy and his treasures, his expression almost cracked. This man really had a character. He liked to bring his treasured books with him when he went out. He never forgot to bring them with him wherever he went. Qiguan Rang's eyes lit up instantly. It was as if he saw countless fairies descending from the sky. For scholars who were eager to learn, what could be more attractive than tens of thousands of books? Jiang Pengji wasn't in Xiangyang district. The task of entertaining Ching Cheng fell on Su Ke's shoulders. First, he had to clarify Ching Cheng's intentions. Ching Cheng didn't hide anything. He told Su Ke and Qiguan Rang his situation directly. Su Ke and Qiguan Rang were overwhelmed by the favor. This was a windfall. Not to mention Ching Cheng's wealth, just the 10,000 books he brought were worth countless treasures. Because Jiang Pengji wasn't around, Su Ke and Qiguan Rang had a private discussion. They arranged for Ching Cheng's family to stay in the best house in the district. The two of them were not idiots. Talents who came to their territory were their people. How could they let a cooked duck fly away? Idiots. Huang Song was shot in the knee for no reason. Ching Cheng accepted it with a smile and settled down with his wife and children. Su Ke turned around and sent an urgent secret letter to Jiang Pengji. Although Ching Cheng wasn't an employee that could be exploited, he could help Jiang Pengji train employees that could be exploited. Thinking of how busy he had been during this period of time, Su Ke wished that his lord could grow wings and fly back right now. Chapter 667. Knowing that the cooked duck. No, Ching Cheng had brought his family to Xiangyang district. Jiang Pengji still felt like she was in a dream. She looked at the messenger dumbfoundedly, then looked at the secret letter in her hand. It was an important letter that Su Ke had sent urgently. Who did you say came? The messenger repeated what he had just said. Although Jiang Pengji did not completely lose her composure, she could not help but smile. This Ching Cheng was not an ordinary person. Yang Si looked at Jiang Pengji's expression and made this speculation. Congratulations, my lord. It was a good sign that someone had taken the initiative to seek shelter. Yang Si folded his sleeves, bowed, and congratulated her in a clear voice. Wei Ci lowered his eyelids and said, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Cheng Wenfu was originally the district magistrate of Sui and County in Fufeng County of Haozhou. If he did not encounter a difficult problem, I'm afraid he would not easily abandon everything he has and bring his family to seek shelter with you. I'm afraid there's more to this. Hearing how Wei Ci addressed Ching Cheng, Yang Si raised his eyebrows in dissatisfaction. You know Ching Cheng? Listen, he directly called Cheng Wenfu. Addressing someone by their courtesy name was either a superior to a subordinate, a senior to a junior, or a friend of the same generation. What was the relationship between Wei Ci and Ching Cheng? The answer was, a friend despite the difference in age. Yes, we've occasionally exchanged letters over the years. Cheng Wenfu is not a reckless and hot-blooded person. He was willing to leave the mainland with his family, so he must have encountered some problems. Wei Ci knew Ching Cheng in this life, and they were friends in their previous life. They had a good relationship, and he also knew how important Ching Cheng was. I think that my lord should ask clearly before making plans. Cheng Wenfu is usually a man of few words and doesn't like to communicate with others. If my lord doesn't know clearly and accidentally offends him, I'm afraid you'll inadvertently offend him. Most talents had a temper. Jiang Pengji did not need to follow their lead, but she could not be careless and offend him. Jiang Pengji naturally knew this principle. Otherwise, based on her sarcastic face and verbal skills, she would not be able to form today's overtime team. Hearing that Wei Ci and Ching Cheng actually knew each other, she said, although I have some connections with Uncle Cheng, I've only known him for a short time and I'm not clear about many details. If you know anything, you can tell me so that I can be mentally prepared. We'll talk in detail later. Wei Ci agreed calmly. Indeed, he had to deal with Ching Cheng seriously to avoid losing such a talented person. Normally, Yang Si wouldn't think much of this conversation. But now, he knew that his lord was not a pure male. He always felt that the conversation between his lord and Zi Shao made him think about it very carefully. He was probably scared out of his wits. When he looked at his lord now, he constantly felt that she wanted to sleep with Wei Ci. She threw Wei Ci a look that said, "You're on your own." Wei Ci was confused. Yang Si still had an "I didn't hear anything" expression on his face, ignoring everything around him. Recently, he had nothing to do. The live stream was basically about Jiang Pengji and her subordinates working overtime. The content was a little boring. The live stream viewers did not care. They were the best at finding joy in hardship. They were good at finding cuteness from the details and capturing all kinds of emoticons. For example, now. Good facial features Wang Jieshi. If the host had a social platform like Baidu, in this era, maybe Yang Si would ask for help. I've even thought of the topic, help from the underworld. My boss wants to sleep with my bad friend. What should I do? Pure and kind Zhang Xinjia, of course. Come and watch. Lucky goddess Zhang Jiala, of course. Assist. Jiang Pengji pursed her lips. Sleeping with someone? Was she that bad? Host V, I'm afraid you've forgotten that Zi Shao threw himself into my arms. After she posted this sentence, it was followed by 666 and host's heart is shameless. After laughing and fooling around, Jiang Pengji did not forget about business. She dug out the memory of meeting Ching Cheng many years ago and carefully speculated. Wei Ci asked her in private, "Does my lord want to put Cheng Wenfu in an important position?" Jiang Pengji said, "Your lord has never liked to keep idle people, unless they are family members." Wei Ci was speechless. "I've read Su Ke's letter carefully and have a general understanding. Huang Song's influence in Haozhou was growing. He wanted to use Sui and County, where Qing lived, as a springboard to get his hands on the entire Fufeng County. This was not a big deal. After all, Qing's fifth uncle, Qing Jing, worked under Huang Song. If Sui and County benefits others, it's better to benefit Huang Song. However, Qing did not stay in Haozhou with peace of mind. Instead, he left with his family. It's mostly because he doesn't want to work for Huang Song, or rather, he doesn't like official strife. Huang Song was currently short of manpower. If Qing became Huang Song's subordinate, he would either be used by him seriously, or he would inevitably be involved in power strife. This was what Qing hated the most. Or, Qing could compromise and find a way to resign. However, according to Huang Song's temperament, would he let Qing off so easily? Obviously, this was impossible. Even if he agreed to Qing's resignation, he would probably find a way to restrict the personal freedom of Qing's family and restrict them from working for others. According to Jiang Pengji's understanding of Huang Song, the probability of this guy doing so was very high, especially after the incident with Yang Si. Wei Ci said, then, my lord means, through Jiang Pengji's words, Wei Ci knew that she would not force Qing, but if she did not force him, wouldn't it be a waste of manpower? Jiang Pengji snorted and secretly laughed at Huang Song's bad luck. It was fine to miss out on Yang Si, but now even Qing, who was comparable to a mountain of gold and silver, had been missed. She said, let Qing do whatever he likes. It's not like he's neglecting his proper duties. Wei Ci was surprised. Her tone did not sound like a junior talking to an elder. Instead, she spoiled Qing like a junior. But then again, he was an old child. Shouldn't he be spoiled? Even though Qing was not that old yet. Jiang Pengji's eyes seemed to have a myriad of stars. Mr. Qing has a collection of tens of thousands of books at home. Most of them are precious stocks. Back then, I was immature and used bamboo paper as a fee to polish my brush. I begged him to make a copy of the book for me. Mr. Qing did not fuss over it. Instead, he did what he said. Now that I think about it, I feel rather ashamed. I think that Mr. Qing must be an extremely noble scholar. He once said that he did everything possible to collect these unique books just so that future generations could also see the glory of their predecessors. It was not for selfishness or for profit. Since this is the case, why not fulfill Mr. Cheng's wish? Wei Ci did not speak. Through this conversation, he knew that Jiang Pengji would not wrong Qing. Instead, she would make Qing continue to sacrifice his life for her. Wasn't it like this in her previous life? There were only a few days left before the army set off to rescue the emperor, but Qing's matter could not be delayed. What if he felt that Jiang Pengji had neglected him and ran away with his family? Therefore, Jiang Pengji rode on Little White that day and rushed to Xiangyang district overnight. The journey was dusty. Even Little White, a peerless horse that could travel thousands of miles a day, was exhausted in the end. She instructed the horsekeeper, prepare the best food for Little White and serve him well. Chapter 668. Without wasting any time, she went straight to visit Qing. Even though Qing was prepared, he was still shocked by Jiang Pengji's efficiency. Uncle Qing, your nephew has come to pay a visit this time. I would like to shamelessly ask for a favor from you. Jiang Pengji went straight to the point, skipping the complicated greetings and small talk. She went straight to the point after a greeting. Qing hadn't seen Jiang Pengji for many years, but he had been paying attention to her news. He had a good impression of her. If someone else asked, he would probably frown, but since Jiang Pengji said so, he asked patiently. Just say it. If I can help, I won't refuse. Qing had sent his wife and children away early in the morning. Only he and Jiang Pengji were in the hall. Jiang Pengji moved the heavy black box in front of her and pushed it in front of Qing, indicating for him to open it. Qing was puzzled, but he did as he was told. The audience in the streaming room thought Jiang Pengji had prepared a trump card. They waited excitedly for Ching Ching to open the box. When Ching Ching unlocked the box with his thin, calloused hands and opened it, the audience in the streaming room was disappointed. What? They thought there was a treasure in the box, but it turned out to be a thick piece of paper that was white in color. Ching Ching was also puzzled. He looked up at Jiang Pengji and saw a peaceful smile on the youth's lips. He couldn't help but frown. When he picked up the knife paper, Ching Ching found some clues from the feeling in his hand. This isn't bamboo paper. He spoke in a declarative tone. In order to steal Ching Cheng's tens of thousands of books, Jiang Pengji had secretly provided him with a large amount of bamboo paper. The paper was of high quality. Ching Ching loved books. He had spent most of his time copying books. He had dealt with bamboo paper for many years. How could he not see the difference between the two? Even though the color was not much different, it felt very different in his hands. He could tell with one touch that they were different. Jiang Pengji said, "It's indeed not bamboo paper. Uncle Ching, you can call this paper rice paper." Ching Ching repeated doubtfully, "Rice paper? Is it a new paper made by your family?" "It can't be considered a new paper. It's been made for many years, but it hasn't been announced to the public." "No wonder." Ching Ching nodded as he listened. Suddenly itching to show his skill, he ground the ink and wrote a few words on the xian paper. Seeing that his semi-cursive was as smooth as flowing water, his handwriting vigorous and powerful, many of the audience members instantly became his fans. Jiang Pengji smiled and asked Ching Ching, "Uncle Ching, what do you think of the quality of this rice paper?" Ching Ching put down the brush and looked at the words on the xian paper. He stroked his beard in satisfaction and said with a smile, "It's tough but moist, shiny but not slippery, and the ink is extremely moisturizing. It's indeed a good paper. The surface is dense and pure white, and the veins are clean and tidy. It is truly a top-notch product." When he moved his brush just now, Ching Ching found that the xian paper was very easy to melt. If he hesitated a little, the paper would turn into a ball. The words he wrote were full and moist, and the strokes of the brush were as smooth as flowing water, making him unable to put them down. Not only that, the xian paper was of a uniform thickness without any impurities. He used his fingers to pinch it, and it seemed that it could be folded quite well. Ching Ching stroked his beard and said, "Is nephew's paper mill going to sell this xian paper?" Jiang Pengji smiled without saying a word. She gestured for Ching Ching to open the folded xian paper. There was still a mystery in it. Ching Ching was surprised. With the incident just now, he was full of anticipation for the surprise that would follow. The freshly made xian paper was extremely large. There were 100 pieces of paper in one cut, and it could be cut according to the needs. The black box that had previously been used to store the xian paper was not big, so the xian paper naturally had to be folded into a long strip. Ching Ching unfolded it and found that there were actually a few pieces of paper covered in ink inside. The words on the paper were bold and vigorous, and they faintly revealed an arrogant and domineering aura. Ching Ching said, "Nephew, you've improved again." His handwriting was much better than before. Ching Ching took a closer look at the content on the paper and realized that it was a disorganized article with no content at all. It felt like all kinds of messy words were put together, and he could not make out the content at all. To the viewers in the live stream, it was all garbled. He was puzzled and looked at the second piece. It was still garbled. The third piece was still garbled. The fourth one was still a bunch of gibberish code. Ching Ching blinked his eyes in confusion. He did not understand why Jiang Pengji was showing him this. Was he commenting on her handwriting? After flipping through more than 10 pieces of paper in a row, an idea flashed through Ching Cheng's mind. He finally found out what was wrong. He quickly spread out more than 10 pieces of paper and placed them on the table. Then he stacked them one on top of the other, revealing only the first row of words. He placed them together and looked at them again. He found that the size, shape, and stroke thickness of the words were exactly the same. No matter how good a calligrapher was, it was impossible for him to write more than 10 words that could be completely overlapped with each other. Nephew, was this stamped with a seal? Ching Ching quickly understood the key point. Only stamped with a seal could ensure that the handwriting was 100% consistent. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "The principle is the same, but that thing shouldn't be considered a seal." Even though Ching Cheng was knowledgeable, he could not figure out what Jiang Pengji was planning. He laughed bitterly and pretended to beg for mercy. "Nephew, don't keep me in suspense. You should at least leave some face for me." Jiang Pengji took out a few wooden seals from a secret compartment in the box. A few words were engraved on them. They were the first few words on the few pieces of paper. She said, "Uncle Cheng, you've already looked at the rice paper. Look at these wooden seals. What do you think?" Ching Ching took the wooden seals and found that they were the same size and shape. They were arranged side by side, perfectly satisfying his obsessive-compulsive disorder. He was not stupid. Jiang Pengji's reminder was so obvious that he vaguely had some ideas in his mind. That's right. Why didn't he think of this method? If he used such wooden seals to arrange the content he wanted and printed it on the paper, wouldn't it be an essay? As expected, she said, "A few years ago, I was immature. I used bamboo paper to deceive you of tens of thousands of books in your house. I even made you copy them. I don't know how much energy and time it took. After being scolded by my father, I felt very guilty. After a deep reflection, I suddenly thought of this method. If I ask a carpenter to engrave common words as a wooden seal, I can use the wooden seal to arrange the content of the book whenever I want to print a book. I can print a copy in a moment. Isn't it more convenient and faster than copying by hand?" Ching Ching felt his heart beating wildly. He was so shocked that he could not even hold the things in his hand steadily. They fell to the ground with a clatter. Chapter 669. Of course, it made sense. Ching Ching was not a hot-blooded young man. He did not take the bait easily, but he had to admit that he was tempted. "My dear nephew, do you know what you are doing?" Ching Ching was silent for 15 minutes. Jiang Pengji was not in a hurry. She quietly waited for his reply. "I know." Jiang Pengji always used her brain when she did things, especially when it concerned her family's life and death. Ching Cheng's face showed some fear. He asked, "Since you know, why are you still doing this?" Jiang Pengji snorted and opened her mouth contemptuously. Her words were sharp and unkind, and she pointed out the shortcomings. Why? The lies, flattery, and empty words were naturally for the sake of Uncle Cheng's lifelong wish. He wanted the tens of thousands of books in the library to be passed down to the later generations and known by the later generations. Speaking the truth from the bottom of his heart, he naturally wanted to change the world, get rid of the evils and establish a new order. The world belonged to the people after all. It was not the world of a family. It was not a toy for the latter to play politics, control the world, and do whatever they wanted. The gentry held great power and did not want to be involved in practical matters. They lived a luxurious life and decayed in luxury. Uncle Cheng, you are knowledgeable. Do you think that it is only the royal family's fault that the world is in such chaos? Did those who played power behind the scenes not do anything wrong? Ching Ching listened for a while and was stunned. He said with difficulty, "Lanting, you are also from the gentry." Even if Ching Ching agreed with her and had such thoughts occasionally, he did not dare to say it out loud. "To me, the people and the common people are far more important than me and my family. If the latter can be sacrificed for the former, I am willing to do everything I can." Jiang Pengji said calmly, "If the gentry's disaster is not stopped, the world will only become more chaotic in the future. Uncle, have you thought about what will happen when the Central Plains continues to be weak and the barbarians become strong? To put it bluntly, it's not impossible for him to lose his clothes. Ching Cheng's face turned pale. His heart wavered even more. Even his fingers were trembling. Jiang Pengji forced Ching Ching step by step. The audience in the streaming room also felt that the atmosphere was not right. The reticent Huang Xiaotian, who can tell me what happened? If I remember correctly, the host was just recommending printing and xian paper to Ching Ching. How did the topic change so suddenly? It feels like the atmosphere is frozen. Gentle and pleasant Han Wenqing, previous poster, stop talking, stop playing games, and read more books. For now, printing is nothing. You can buy a photocopier if you have money. But in the era of the host, printing is a provocation to the entire social system. Do you understand? Huang Xiaotian of a few words, I don't understand. Don't you also play games? You have the same ID. Who doesn't know each other? Reticent Yu Wenzhou, simply, the host, in the hosts. And I have different opinions. Most of the books were unique copies, which meant that the culture was only passed down within a small circle of people. This was the advantage of the landowning households. It was similar to the solidification of social class. The audience, it. And. To. You, and the one, and the time. Wrote. Clever mind and dexterous hands Yu Wenzhou. In modern times, families with normal incomes can afford to send their children to school. If they seize the opportunity, they can always climb up the social ladder. In ancient times, it was different. Here, I'm seriously criticizing the theory that studying is useless. How can China, which was full of opportunities 20 years ago, be the same as China now? The children of farmers were farmers, and the children of gentry were gentry. The landowning households were superior to ordinary people, and books were a very important medium. If books were no longer the privilege of the minority, what do you think the result would be? The host was under a lot of pressure. Just like in a game, it's better to line up well than to play well. In this era, it could also be explained in one sentence: it was better to be born well than to study well. No matter how talented one was, no matter how smart one was, one's background alone was enough to crush a bunch of talents. For example, Su Ku, Qiguan Rang, and Yang Si, who worked under Jiang Pengji. Su Ku had once been a slave, and there was an indelible mark on his face. This was a stain on his life. Qiguan Rang was of mixed blood. He was the son of a barbarian from the northern borderline and a woman from the border of the Central Plains. Needless to say, Yang Si had a mother who was suspected to have been born in a brothel, and grew up being fed by hundreds of families. If they were born in times of peace, the three of them would probably die of depression. Even if they had a good mentality, they would not be able to stand out in this lifetime. Wei Xiai and Feng Zhen's families were in decline, and they could barely be considered as the down-and-out gentry. Tracing back to their ancestors, they had at least one worthy ancestor. As for Feng Jin, who was born into a wealthy family, his style was completely different. What Jiang Pengji wanted to do was to break the shackles of the background, and make it so that studying would no longer be a privilege for some people. As long as one had the ability, there would be a chance to climb up. Many people could not change their background, but they could change their future. To be a farmer in the morning, to be an emperor in the evening. Even if ordinary people and aristocratic families still did not have the same starting line, at least they could see the hope of being on par or even surpassing them. Books, printing, and rice paper. These three were not scary. What was scary was that Jiang Pengji wanted to use them to break the existing system. This was what Ching Ching was worried and afraid about. After a while, his lips trembled, and his voice was as soft as a mosquito's. You're crazy, Jiang Pengji was calm and composed. If there are no people, how can there be a country? If there are no countries, how can there be a home? Since ancient times, how many people shouted about serving the country and the people, but in the end, when the dust settled, their selfishness was for the sake of their small family. I want to compete for the divine tripod of the 9 provinces. This is the resolve that a future emperor should have. I don't ask for the world to be the same, but I ask for the 9 provinces to be unified and the rivers to be clean and the seas to be peaceful. Domineering and arrogant, it made people tremble in fear. Qing Cheng's first reaction was that she was too arrogant and egotistical, but his second reaction was that it was only natural. A person who dared to challenge the existing social system and even completely overturn it was naturally a lunatic. Naturally, she was arrogant and egotistical. Uncle Cheng, you are a scholar. Qing Cheng was instantly speechless, as if someone had pressed the mute button. I thought you had a cold and unyielding character that was indestructible, that no one and nothing in this world could break it. Qing Cheng raised his eyelids and spoke in a hoarse voice. You don't have to bewitch me. Tell me, what do you want to do? Jiang Pengji's lips curled up. The raw material of rice paper is mostly sandalwood. Chongzhou has a lot of this stuff. The output is 1,000 times more than bamboo paper, and the cost is low. Wooden printing and mass production of books. I don't want to do anything, I just want to collect all the books in the world and fill up the library. When the area is stable, I will build a library and set up an academy. I will not care about the threshold or background. I will recruit students of the right age. Qing Cheng's smile carried a hint of mockery. That's it? You want me to be a printer and carpenter? How is that possible? Jiang Pengji blinked and said sincerely, I hope that Uncle Cheng can take charge of the overall situation. I hope that Uncle Cheng can take charge of the overall situation. I hope that you can compile elementary reading materials, revise the historical records, organize the ancient books that have been lost for hundreds of years, and carry forward the past and open up the future. Your responsibility is far heavier and more arduous than mine. Chapter 670. After Jiang Pengji finished speaking, the scene fell into a suffocating silence. Qing Cheng had to admit a fact. He was moved. Jiang Pengji's words hit Qing Cheng's weak spot and pinched his lifeline. Even if he was born into an aristocratic family, he could not refute every word she said. It was like the golden words of a saint, and the future would prove that what she said was true. It was a prophecy. How could mortals refute it? When the audience in the streaming room suspected that Qing Cheng and Jiang Pengji had pressed the pause button, Qing Cheng asked her in a hoarse voice. Aren't you afraid of being smashed to pieces? Jiang Pengji smiled. What's the big deal about being smashed to pieces? Even if I'm nailed to the pillar of shame in history, no one can stop me from doing what I want to do. Life is only 100 years. I don't want to regret it when I'm old. Whether I'm famous in history or infamous for thousands of years, it's impossible for people to live without desires. It's just fame and fortune. For ordinary people, after 2 or 3 generations, even the descendants would forget the name of their ancestors. But if I live in history, no matter who mentions my name, they must remember that there was such a person. She had reached the peak in her previous life. How could she be willing to be ordinary and unknown in this life? If she wanted to make trouble, she would make it bigger. Not only did she want to influence the present for decades, but she also wanted to change the history of the next hundreds or thousands of years because of her. Unify the 9 states and ascend the throne? That was not enough. Qing Cheng could not help but smile bitterly. Young people, newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. He had thought that Lu Shi lived in Lu Shi's shadow and followed in his footsteps. Now it seemed that she had long reached a realm of thinking that was difficult for all people to reach. Arrogant and arrogant, there was only one person who dared to use his life to stir up the storm of the times. Jiang Pengji said calmly, the future will prove that I'm right. Whether it's 10 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years, I can wait. Qing Cheng was surprised. He knew the real meaning of Jiang Pengji's words. She did not mean that she could live for so long, but she believed that she was right. No matter how far in the future generations would prove that she was right. How confident was she? Forget it. Ching Ching calmed down and realized that his hands were still shaking, and his breathing was disordered as if he had run a long way. His undershirt was already soaked in sweat. I'm old, and I don't have the energy to play with young people. Ching Ching hadn't been convinced by Jiang Pengji. The audience in the streaming room couldn't help but complain in the bullet screen. The anchor's hot-blooded and Chinibyu words just now made them feel hot all over and their blood was boiling. Why was Ching Ching still indifferent? Scheming Yang Cici, heh, the host's ever-successful trick has finally hit a wall. Everyone should celebrate. Loyal and honest Yi Bushio, TSK, young man, you're wrong. I'll bet a pack of cigarettes on the streamer. Lo Siji Lianmeng, hey, can you change your IDs? You can't be so ruthless, right? Heart-piercing. Eloquent Josakai, keep up with the times, keep up with the trends, and never change. Hand speed expert Yu Wenzhou, hashtag tender smile, I've already changed. Gui Kai Guofengxio, to the one above, you should change back to your original ID. This time, your ID is even more ruthless. Jiang Pengji didn't understand their jokes, but looking at the bullet screen, she could mostly guess that these IDs were the products of natural ruthlessness. Host V, loyal and honest Yi Bushio, you've guessed correctly. As soon as she sent this bullet screen, Ching Ching, who seemed to have rejected her, spoke again. Even a young man like you isn't afraid. Why should an old man like me, who has one foot in the grave, be afraid? Other than true scholars, others couldn't understand how attractive Jiang Pengji's blueprint was to Ching Ching. A warrior would die for a bosom friend. Without a doubt, the teenager in front of him was the bosom friend that Ching Ching had been searching for half his life. Ching Ching said with a complicated expression, I only hope that you don't disappoint your original intentions and don't forget what you said today. The road from humble to supreme was too long, and there were too many temptations. Ching Ching didn't know if the future Jiang Pengji would still not disappoint her original intentions when she looked back. Could this teenager withstand all kinds of temptations? From the beginning to the end, would he not change his original intentions? Jiang Pengji smiled and said, of course. Of course she wouldn't change, because for Jiang Pengji, that was faith. From meeting Ching Ching to successfully persuading him, Jiang Pengji spent more than an hour. Her achievements were still brilliant. When Su Ku heard the news, he couldn't help but tease her. My lord, you're successful in every endeavor. Qiguan Rang secretly rolled his eyes. He didn't think it was something to boast about. Jiang Pengji threw something to Su Ku and said lazily, don't be happy too early, my big accountant. The bamboo slip floated into Su Ku's arms. He looked a little confused. A newcomer had joined the overtime team. Why couldn't he be happy? Su Ku curiously untied the bow on the bamboo slip. When he unfolded it to take a look, his expression almost cracked into pieces. My lord, Qiguan Rang heard a trace of grief and indignation in Su Ku's voice. He couldn't help but step forward curiously. He stuck his head out to take a look. What is this? He looked at it as he asked. Soon, he saw it from beginning to end. He silently lit a row of candles for Su Ku in his heart. A proposal, Jiang Pengji said. I want to hire Mr. Cheng to oversee the overall situation. Whether it's opening an academy or a library, books are the most important. I've divided the newly designed printing technique into two types. One is movable type and the other is engraving. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. Movable type is more convenient and flexible, while engraving is exquisite and clear. As for which one to choose, it's up to Mr. Cheng's decision. Su Ku pulled a long face. He thought that Ching Ching came over to share the burden with him. In the end, he threw him a heavy task that was as heavy as a mountain. Whether it was the movable type that Jiang Pengji had mentioned before or the engraving that she was now dictating, which one of them wasn't a project that burned money? Once this aspect was involved, in the end, it would all be piled on him. After all, he was the housekeeper. Su Ku was quite sensitive to numbers. After calculating the cost, he couldn't help but be speechless. Jiang Pengji saw the pain on his face. She said calmly and firmly, "I know that it will cost a lot of money, but this plan is the same as the post-war pension. Even if I have to sacrifice everything I have, I will complete it. Regardless of the cost, I will fully support Mr. Cheng." No one knew better than her how much economic benefits and political influence the popularization of books would bring to society. It could even change the social structure and tear apart the last fig leaf of the gentry. Even if it caused a reign of terror and thousands of lives were sacrificed, she would still do it. Contributions to the present generation would benefit the future generations. In her opinion, anything that could push the entire society forward was worth a try. Even if she, as a pioneer, had to pay the price with her life, she would take it. Su Ku's expression was solemn. He replied in a clear voice, "Yes, sir." Jiang Pengji rubbed her eyebrows. Ever since she received the news from Qing Cheng, she had rushed back with all her might. She hadn't rested until now. "I'll go rest for a while." Jiang Pengji lowered her eyes and was about to leave, and the messenger came in to report. Qing Yuan had come to visit. Chapter 671. Qing Cheng had 2 sons and a daughter. Qing Yuan was the second legitimate son of Qing Cheng and his wife. Qing Yuan's courtesy name was Gong Liao. What is he doing here? Jiang Pengji frowned imperceptibly. Could it be that this second Lang Jun thought that she had cheated his old father, Qing Cheng, and was rushing to settle the score with her? Thinking of this, she smiled dumbly. "Xiaoyu, go and test the other party's intentions first." Su Ku smiled bitterly. He could only bite the bullet and do it. As for why Jiang Pengji didn't show up, Su Ku had also found a ready-made excuse. His lord had rushed all the way back for Qing Cheng. She was extremely tired and had fallen asleep as soon as she returned. The servants couldn't disturb her sleep, so he could only come forward to receive Qing Yuan. It was a perfect excuse. Not only could it save face for both sides, but it could also perfectly explain his lord's laziness and avoidance. It would also flatter Qing Cheng at the same time. Qing Yuan had just passed his 20s. His face still looked a little tender and youthful, but the aura around him was quite peaceful. There was a kind of steadiness and calmness that didn't match his age. Su Ku could be considered experienced and knowledgeable. Just by looking at Qing Yuan's bearing, he felt that he was a loyal and sincere person. After a further conversation, Su Ku was even more certain of his guess. Not only was Qing Yuan not looking for Jiang Pengji to settle the score with her, but he was also there to recommend himself. Yes, he was not wrong. He was indeed recommending himself. Buy one get one free. He had abducted the old one, Qing Cheng, and he had also gotten a young one, Qing Yuan. "My lord, look at how much sin you have committed." Knowing this, Su Ku couldn't help but be secretly speechless. "Young man, isn't it good to be alive? Do you know the consequences of recommending yourself? The Wanzhou overtime team welcomes you. You work overtime every day, all year round. The benefits are deceptive, and the leaders are unreliable. If the Lord's brain was damaged one day, the workload would increase several times." Of course, Su Ku couldn't tell the truth. If he scared him away, his lord and other colleagues would fight him to the death. Qing Yuan really didn't know the internal situation of Wanzhou, but he knew how heavy the burden his father had taken on was. If he was not careful, he would go down in history. As a child, how could Qing Yuan bear to let his middle-aged father bear such a huge burden and risk? As the son of Qing Cheng, he was one of the people who knew Qing Cheng best. He could understand his father's pursuit and ideals. Therefore, Qing Yuan did not stop him. Instead, he felt happy for his father. While he was happy, he was also deeply worried. That was why he recommended himself and took the initiative to seek shelter. Jiang Pengji smiled when she heard what Su Ku said. What an obedient and sensible filial son. You've met Qing Yuan, what do you think of him? Su Ke deliberated seriously and recalled the conversation with Qing Yuan just now. Qing Gongliao is steady and careful. He has a pragmatic personality. He's a good candidate. As for how strong he was, it was hard to say. He would secretly test him later. I think Mr. Cheng's son won't be too bad. How could there be any reason to reject a labor force that was voluntarily delivered to the door? Because of the rapid expansion of power, the military strength and development could not keep up with the pace. This caused the foundation to be shaken, which became Jiang Pengji's current hidden worry. What she needed the most right now was someone like Qing Yuan. He was calm and meticulous, and would not rashly stir up trouble. Even if they didn't have amazing talents, as long as they worked hard and steadily, they would still become the mainstay of Wanzhou's power. In that case, I'll leave Qing Gongliao to you for the time being. Jiang Pengji's voice was hoarse. The rescue of the emperor is imminent. I'll transfer 10,000 troops and take a few people with me. The official duties in Wanzhou will be heavy. Teach Qing Gongliao first. When he gets used to it, you can throw things to him. Jiang Pengji was already short of people. If she took away part of her family's assets to rescue the emperor, the base camp in Wanzhou would be even more short of people. At that moment, bumping into Qing Cheng and his son was like having a pillow when she was dozing off. Even Jiang Pengji couldn't help but applaud her luck. That's good. I guess I'll be a little more free. Su Ke smiled and teased. He wasn't the slightest bit unhappy about a newcomer stealing his job. In fact, he was happy to see it happen. It wasn't that Su Ke was careless, but Jiang Pengji had set a good example for everyone. She wouldn't bury anyone's talent. Although she was biased in private, she was very fair in official matters, and people were convinced. Su Ke didn't have to worry about Qing Yuan threatening his position because there was no conflict of interest between the two. If promoting Qing Yuan could reduce his pressure and increase Wanzhou's strength, Su Ke would do it even without Jiang Pengji's instructions. Yes, I've always been at ease when Xiaoyu does things. With Su Ke's help, she really didn't have to worry. Look at other people's forces. There would always be some kind of friction within the group. The atmosphere was not harmonious, and they held each other back. To give a ready-made example, Yang Xi's old boss, Prince Changsho, was a typical example. On the surface, the internal situation was harmonious, but in private, the undercurrents were surging. You tripped me up, and I'll do the same to you. It was like a plot from the palace. They mocked and ridiculed each other, pointing at the mulberry tree and scolding the locust tree. They fought fiercely. Even on Jiang Pengji's side, they weren't considered a family. In fact, there were some discordant factors. For example, Feng Zhen, who was a wanton and unrestrained man, didn't have a good relationship with Feng Jin, Su Ke, and the others. Even so, they wouldn't shift these conflicts to official matters. First of all, they had brains and wouldn't let their personal interests get in the way of public affairs. They also supervised and restrained each other. Second, Jiang Pengji wouldn't allow them to do so. She wouldn't interfere with their private relationships. But if anyone were to make trouble in official matters, did they think she was dead? She would throw everyone into suitable positions to shine and make use of their labor force to her heart's content. She wouldn't let any talent go to waste. Jiang Pengji's consistent creed was to do as much as one had the ability. She wouldn't send those who had high standards but little ability off. Jiang Pengji hadn't made an accurate judgment on Qing Yuan's position, so she let him practice for a while before deciding. When Qing Yuan returned home, Qing only knew what his son had done behind his back. Son, you sold yourself just like that? Qing frowned. Do you know why I've stopped you from becoming an official several times? He didn't like official strife, but it didn't mean that he liked to control his son's life. The reason why he didn't approve of Qing Yuan becoming an official was because Qing thought that his youngest son wasn't mature enough and wasn't capable enough. It wasn't easy for a person who wasn't capable to stand out, even if he came from a good family. Qing Yuan felt guilty. He lowered his head and fiddled with his sleeves, not saying a word. Qing shook his head. Forget it. What's done can't be undone. Since Lu Lanting, the Lord has accepted you, don't embarrass the Qing family. Qing Yuan lowered his head and said, Please guide me, Father. Do more, talk less, don't be stubborn, ask for advice seriously, and learn with an open mind. Don't be fooled by the people around the Lord. They're only 3 to 5 years older than you, but they're all dragons and phoenixes among men. There are benefits to being born into a humble background. At least their temperaments are more mature and stable than their peers. Qing thought of Su Ku. Su Ku had been Jiang Pengji's right-hand man for many years. Do you understand? Qing Yuan nodded obediently. Qing was satisfied. His youngest son had a good temperament. He wasn't as unruly as his eldest son. Chapter 672. It turned out that Qing Yuan was gentle and honest. He was indeed an obedient and sensible child. At first, Su Ku was a little worried. What was there to worry about? Naturally, he was worried that Qing Yuan would not cooperate. Qing Yuan had just become an official and was young and impetuous. If he felt that he had not been put in an important position by the Lord and was suppressed by a person of mediocre background, he would feel uncomfortable and not cooperate in his actions. If that was the case, Su Ku would have a headache. Fortunately, the scene that Su Ku was worried about did not happen. Qing Yuan was young and inexperienced, but he was methodical and meticulous. Most importantly, he was humble and eager to learn. He would not look down on Su Ku because of his lowly background. No matter how boring and tedious the task was, Qing Yuan could still concentrate. He was simply a little angel in Su Ku's eyes. Which boss and colleague would not like such a good employee who worked overtime obediently and did not complain? Thus, Qing Yuan easily gained the favor of Su Ku and Qiguan Rang. The three of them worked very well together. After all, Qing Yuan was inexperienced. Even if he was careful enough, he still made small mistakes in many places. Su Ku and Qiguan Rang did not find it troublesome. They gave him pointers if they could and helped him make up for his mistakes if they could not, making Qing Yuan feel like he was bathing in the spring breeze. At first, Qing Yuan thought that his official career would cause conflict and it would be difficult for him to integrate into the group. Now that he saw it, the people under the Lord were quite easy to get along with. However, today, Xiaoyu asked about elder brother's matters. Qing raised his eyelids. He had been busy organizing the books and classifying them in detail recently, so he did not pay much attention to his son. Even so, he knew that his son had been going out early in the morning and returning home late at night. He was busy with government affairs. About Gong Luo? What about him? Qing had 2 sons and a daughter. Other than his eldest son who was an official in another place, his younger son and daughter were still by his side. When the family fled Sui and County, he took his wife, second son, and daughter with him. Only his eldest son, who had a family and a career, was left behind. The eldest son, Qing Sun, was called Gong Luo. His temperament was like heaven and earth compared to his second son. Xiaoyu asked me if I have an elder brother and even indirectly asked about him. Qing Yuan was a little baffled, suspecting that his elder brother and Xiaoyu were old friends. Elder brother has been an official for many years and rarely comes home. I don't know much either. Could it be that Xiaoyu is an old acquaintance of elder brother? Or should I say, where have I heard of your name? Qing's expression changed when he heard that. He looked at his son with pity in his eyes. He knew his eldest son very well. His son was very particular about his family background. His circle of friends would never coincide with Su Ku's, let alone know him. When Su Ku asked if Qing Yuan had an older brother, the greatest possibility was that he wanted to kidnap him. Qing lowered his eyes. Not only did he kidnap the old one, but he also wanted to kidnap the boss. Yes, 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 very good. With Gong Luo's temperament, I'm afraid he's not suitable. Qing Yuan's eyes suddenly widened. After his father's guidance, he finally understood Su Ku's true purpose. Big brother won't come. Qing secretly pouted. As long as Jiang Pengji was not out of her mind, she would never accept Qing Sun. Father, I heard that the Lord will lead the army to rescue the emperor tomorrow. You want to go with me? Qing asked calmly. I want to meet him, but based on the current situation, it's probably impossible. Qing Yuan did want to go, but he also knew that he would not be of any use if he went. Rescuing the emperor was not a small matter. There would be a chaotic battle at any time. He lacked experience and was still too inexperienced. Qing said, the situation in the world is already chaotic. Rescuing the emperor will be an important turning point. You don't have to join in the fun. You won't be able to help and will only add to the chaos. Qing Yuan looked depressed. He had been dealt a blow by his old father. Qing said in a low voice, however, if you want to stand out, this is also a good opportunity. Father, please give me some pointers. Wanzhou has just been taken, and the foundation is unstable. The Lord wants to transfer a portion of the elites to rescue the emperor, which means that the troops left to guard the rear will be seriously insufficient. If we want to alleviate the crisis, we can only recruit troops and train the elites at the same time. This shows how much pressure there is. But as long as we can survive the initial period, the Lord's power in the north will be completely stabilized. Do your job well and be pragmatic. When the time comes, no one can erase your share of the rewards. Remember, don't be as eager for quick success as your brother. Stability is the most important. Qing analyzed his son clearly and did not forget to give him a warning. He did not like officialdom, but both of his sons had their own ideas. He could only use his own experience to give them some advice. It was a pity that his eldest son disliked him. There was a lot of friction between the father and son. His youngest son was obedient and easy to coax. He had a gentle temperament and could listen to his advice. On the other side, Jiang Pengji had also decided on the lineup for rescuing the emperor. Jing Rong used to work under Prince Changshou's camp, so I know them better. You are indispensable this time. Jiang Pengji was the first to call out Yang Si. Chapter 673. I'm afraid there won't be any results at this alliance meeting. No matter how many troops I bring, it'll just be a formality. Jiang Pengji pinched her chin and muttered. All kinds of thoughts went through her mind. She said, to prevent the Red Lotus group from reviving, we can't transfer too many troops from Wanzhou. So I've decided to bring 10,000 troops this time. 6,000 elites, 4,000 new recruits, and the rest will stay behind to guard the rear. Qiguan Rang, Feng Jin, and the others frowned imperceptibly. They disagreed with her proposal. Only 10,000 troops. Although Wanzhou's military strength was tight and its foundation was unstable, it wasn't that shabby. Their lord was personally leading the alliance meeting. How could she hold the fort with only 10,000 troops? Her subordinates still had their concerns. They didn't say anything immediately, but the viewers in the streaming room were the first to be dissatisfied. Longevity Su Mucho, no, streamer, are you really that shabby? You're still the governor of Wanzhou, even if it's illegal at the moment. If you don't think you're shabby, others will think you're down and out for the alliance meeting with 10,000 followers. Thinking back to the last century, the leader of the gangsters could bring dozens of followers when he went out for a fight. You'll definitely be looked down upon if you only bring 10,000 troops. Speaking of the alliance meeting, I think of the 18 feudal vassals' crusade against Dong. If they also go through the trouble of electing a leader, you'll definitely be left on the bench with only 10,000 troops. Hand speed expert Yu Wenzhou, haha, upstairs, have you been possessed by the taciturn Huang Xiaotian? Lo Ciji Lianmeng, damn, can you guys change your IDs? Live to 100 years old? I get stabbed in the heart just watching the streaming. Gui kai guo fengxiu. Although this series of IDs is very hurtful, little Susu isn't wrong. According to the current situation, if the streamer only brings 10,000 troops, she'll definitely be looked down upon. Whether it's the alliance meeting or the election of a leader, she won't be able to join in the fun. There was a heated argument in the streaming room. A few strategists showed disapproving expressions at first, but they suddenly thought of something and their expressions returned to normal. This change attracted the attention of some viewers. They sent bullet screens one after another, asking for answers. Lu Shi is my husband. Did you guys notice that the strategists were against it at first? Why are they so calm now? I live next door. I surnamed Wang, that's right. I was too busy watching them start a war on the bullet screens just now. Did I miss something? Old Wang is not as good as old Song Chang. I have a rough idea. Oh right, did you forget about the streamer's father, the Chongzhou magistrate, Lu Shi? Indeed, as the audience in the live streaming room, Old Song, had said, the strategists had not objected because they had thought of Lu Shi. Lu Shi also responded to the call to rescue the emperor. Jiang Pengji had only brought 10,000 troops with her, but if she joined hands with her father, Lu Shi, to participate in the alliance meeting to rescue the emperor, could the number of participants be stronger than the father and son? According to the original plan, Jiang Pengji had intended to bring 15,000 to 20,000 soldiers and horses. However, after further analyzing the situation in Wanzhou, she dispelled that idea. Feng Jin and the others did not know, but Jiang Pengji knew very well that her enemies were not only in the open, but also in the dark. The enemies on the surface were easy to deal with, but the enemies in the dark were very troublesome. Considering the situation in Wanzhou, Jiang Pengji chose the more reliable plan after making repeated choices. It was indeed unseemly to bring 10,000 troops to participate in the alliance meeting to rescue the emperor, but Jiang Pengji was certain that no one would dare to look down on her. I wish you victory in advance, my lord. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, let's work hard together. Before the meeting was adjourned, Jiang Pengji called out to Wei Ci. Zixiao, stay here for a while. I need your help with something. Yang Si stared at his friend's face with a complicated gaze. In the end, he was dragged away by Feng Zhen. After leaving the government office, Feng Zhen tucked his hands into his sleeves, a wanton smile on his face. Yang Jingrong, you haven't married yet. Is there something you can't say? Yang Si rolled his eyes impatiently. Feng Zhen was going to be his partner for a while, so he could not give him face. What do you mean? Feng Zhen smiled and said, I really noticed that you glanced at Zixiao a total of 22 times today. It was like a bolt from the blue. Yang Si's legs turned to jelly and he almost fell down the steps. You wastrel, do you think everyone is like you? Yang Si was so angry that even his beard was about to curl up. Feng Zhen smiled, a strange light flashing in his eyes. Although I'm a wastrel, I don't like men. Yang Si swung his sleeves angrily. I don't like that either. Feng Zhen snorted and put his hand on Yang Si's shoulder to coax him to the side. He asked in a low voice, did you notice something? Yang Si's heart skipped a beat. His face turned slightly green, and he pretended to hide it. What do you mean notice something? I still have things to do, so I won't bother you. Zixiao and the Lord, is there something going on between you two? The corners of Feng Zhen's lips curled up, and he said in a declarative tone, during today's meeting, not only did you look at Zixiao 22 times, but you also glanced at the Lord 23 times vaguely. Tell me, what interesting thing did you notice? Yang Si almost suffocated. Cooperating with such a gossipy wastrel during the alliance meeting was like being retarded. If you're curious, ask them yourself. Feng Zhen folded his sleeves helplessly. I asked, but the Lord and Zixiao denied it outright. You know what kind of people they are. I don't want to play tricks with them. I wanted to get something out of them, but I accidentally lost myself. Yang Si secretly snorted. He also didn't want to play tricks with Fengzhen. Fengzhen was shameless, but he still wanted to save face. Fengzhen said, "Some time ago, the chef came up with a new dish. It's sweet and sour, and it's very appetizing. Don't you want to try it?" Yang Si was speechless. She couldn't move him with words, so she changed to tempting him with delicacies. Did he, Yang Jingrong, look like the kind of person who would lose all integrity for the sake of food? "Oh, let's go. It's almost lunchtime." Yang Si strode forward with a smile on his face. He had thought it through. According to Jiang Pengji, she wanted to reveal her true identity. Why not test Fengzhen's foundation first? The two of them had been appointed to go to war, so it wasn't strange for them to eat together. Why couldn't they discuss countermeasures while eating? Neither of them were people who followed the rules. They didn't talk during meals. It was fine if there were outsiders around, but it was fine if there were no outsiders. When Fengzhen heard Yang Si's speculation, his lungs were almost blocked by the tenderloin, and he coughed so hard that it shook the heavens and the earth. "Jingrong, are you making a fool out of me?" Fengzhen's image was a mess. He didn't have that kind of good or evil aura. Instead, he had the aura of a Chinibu. You suspect that the Lord is a woman. That's the biggest joke in the world. Let me tell you, if a woman looks like the Lord, she won't be able to find a husband in this lifetime. I reckon that she can only become a bandit, rob houses, and forcefully kidnap a man from a good family to be her husband. Yang Si was speechless. Fengzhen couldn't help but recall the scene of him and Jiang Pengji secretly drinking and eating meat. The Lord does look a little feminine, but no matter how you look at him, he's clearly a man. When I first came, Fengyi County wasn't so busy. The Lord and I drank together in private and went to brothels many times. Whenever the Lord was around, the courtesans couldn't be bothered to look at anyone else. Whatever obscene lyrics and songs, what common folk stories, what dirty talk, the Lord would just open his mouth. You say, this kind of old gluttonous person immersed in the mortal world, is a woman? Do you believe it? Yang Si was speechless. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.